Chapter 866. Seeing that Tiger's Mane had understood, Yang Chendong simply explained the matter. Your deputy commander didn't have something to do. He saw something and probably tried to dissuade you, but you didn't listen. As for Xiao Feng, he probably told you to wait for the young master's call, right? Ah. Young master. How did the young master know? Tiger's Mane was shocked. It's not that I know everything, but they are all smart people. They can predict what they will do in advance. As for you, of course, you're not stupid. It's just that you feel that you are too close to me, so you don't have to worry about anything. Alright, you can go back. If there's anything you don't understand, ask your deputy commander and learn more. Yang Chendong waved his hand and reprimanded Tiger's Mane. Yang Si, who came out with the army, lightly patted Tiger's Mane and brought him out of the main tent with a confused expression. Tiger's Mane left the main tent and went to find the deputy commander. He finally realized how reckless his actions were. Commander, since the sixth young master is here, we must fight. But now that Fan Yuhai and Sihaba are in the middle of a battle, why should we make a move now? Letting them exhaust their strength for a while will only be beneficial to us. Tiger's Mane's face couldn't help but turn red when he heard the deputy commander's words. He wanted to win more battles and prove himself, but who would have thought that the more he wanted to, the easier it was to make mistakes. He immediately admitted that his impulsive request to fight was wrong, and even asked the deputy commander to teach him if there were any problems in the future. Facing the popular person beside the sixth young master, the deputy commander was flattered. He immediately said that if there were any problems in the future, he would discuss it with the deputy commander. No matter what, the mercenaries stopped moving after they appeared beside the river of Water Horse. Scouts from all sides reported that they spent their days either eating, sleeping, or training. It was as if they really treated this place as their training ground. When the news reached Fan Yuhai's ears, his face darkened, but there was nothing he could do. Fan Yuhai knew better than anyone how big of a threat Yang Chendong was. If there was one person in the world that he didn't want to fight, it would be Yang Chendong. It was just that fate made fools of people. Wherever he appeared, this person would appear. It was as if this person was born to go against him. Even though Yang Chengwang's cavalry was less than 30,000, Fan Yuhai had never underestimated them. In his eyes, this army was even stronger than Sihaba's 110,000 men. However, even though he knew this, he couldn't attack Yang Chendong right now. Fan Yuhai had no confidence in defeating Yang Chendong. 120,000 cavalrymen seemed to be on a grand scale, as if there was nothing they couldn't do. However, how many of them were actually just a motley crew? How many of them were disloyal to him? With such an army, it was easy to win a battle. Everyone would swarm forward and share the fruits of victory. However, if they lost the battle, the morale of the army would be greatly affected. If things went wrong, the army's morale would fall apart. At that time, not to mention conquering the grasslands, whether or not they could even leave this place alive would be another matter. Even though he knew that such a result was very likely to happen, if he still sent out his troops, then he wouldn't be the famous General Fan Yuhai, but a stupid pig. Forget it, I'll let you enjoy for a few days. Once I defeat Sihaba and unify the entire northern desert grasslands, it won't be too late to fight you then. Men, keep a close eye on the movements of the mercenaries. Report to me immediately if anything happens. In the end, Fan Yuhai still didn't make any preparations to fight Yang Chendong. Sihaba also made the same decision as Fan Yuhai. This person had long heard of the war god's name and knew that he wasn't easy to deal with. In the face of a great enemy, he naturally wouldn't be distracted. Not only did he not provoke the mercenaries, but he also sent people to meet Yang Chendong with generous gifts. It was as if the two sides would work together to eliminate Fan Yuhai first, and then they would share the Mongolian tribe in the north equally. Sihaba had a good plan. Who knew that Yang Chendong was so easy to get along with? You want to borrow his power to eliminate Fan Yuhai and then deal with the mercenaries? You're dreaming too much. Yang Chendong, who was very clear about this matter, handed the matter of the alliance to Deputy Commander Shi Bi. He believed that this person would understand his intentions. It was better to pretend to be polite first. As for whether they really wanted to form an alliance, it was not impossible. Everything would depend on the outcome of the battle. However, before the situation was settled, he wouldn't casually participate in the battle. With such an opportunity to exhaust the enemy, he wouldn't foolishly make a move. As for whether or not someone would make a move against him, if there really was someone who didn't want to live, then he might as well give it a try. He would definitely make that person regret it for the rest of his life. The Northern Desert Mongol War didn't stop because of the arrival of the mercenaries. On the contrary, it became more intense. Neither Fan Yuhai nor Sihaba could understand Yang Chendong's thoughts. They just wanted to end the battle quickly, finish the battle as soon as possible. After a victor was decided, then they could deal with the mercenaries who were eyeing them covetously. Under such pressure, the 200,000 cavalry fought on the grasslands for more than a month, from the beginning of summer to the middle of summer. Many areas that were originally rich with water and grass were dyed red with blood. In just a month, the number of dead and injured grassland cavalry had reached more than 100,000. More than 30 tribal leaders were either killed on the battlefield or their subordinates were all killed. They became a commander without an army, a civilian. After more than a month, Fan Yuhai only had 40,000 cavalry left. Sihaba had 35,000 cavalry. The final battle was about to begin. In the deputy commander's tent of the mercenaries, the messengers sent by Sihaba were making all kinds of promises. There was only one thing they wanted, and that was in the upcoming battle, they hoped the mercenaries could help. Once Fan Yuhai was defeated, they could divide the grasslands equally. This wasn't the first time they had made such a request. But this time, the messengers sent by Sihaba had undoubtedly put in a lot of effort. They actually took out a detailed map of the northern desert Mongol tribes and marked out the details of dividing the grasslands equally. Among them, there were indeed some good locations that were allocated to the mercenaries. The sincerity of the messengers seemed to have moved the deputy commander. He showed a very greedy look and said, "These, and those places are really for us?" The messengers looked at the messengers and calmed him down. He wasn't afraid of greed, but he was afraid that the messengers didn't ask for anything. Now that there was a need, the following matters would be easier to negotiate. "Yes, since our general said so, then these places will be given to you after defeating Fan Yuhai." "Good, good, let me report to the war god. He will give us an answer later." She kept nodding her head. Before she left, she took a few more glances at that piece of land with a reluctant look on her face. Not long after, Sihaba appeared in the main tent. When he arrived, Yang Chendong looked up from his book. "Oh. Deputy Commander Sihaba, do you think it's time for us to attack?" "Yes." Sihaba stood straight and replied. "I think that in the current situation, if we don't attack, both Fan Yuhai and Sihaba will have some misgivings. In the upcoming battle, they probably won't use their full strength. Now it seems that their strength has been weakened quite a bit, but after our scouts' investigation, not all of the 200,000 Mongolian soldiers died on the battlefield. Most of them retreated because they couldn't see the situation clearly." Yang Chendong looked up and frowned. "Continue." "Yes." Shi Bi continued, "In other words, the Mongol tribes in the north of the desert still have some fighting power. Once one of them becomes the final winner, it's very likely that more people will defect and join them if they call for help. If that really happens, even if we want to become enemies with them, it will be much more difficult. This is not in our interest. But if we can directly determine the victor through this battle, or even if we can inform both sides, we can avoid this situation to the greatest extent." Feeling the need to explain the situation in detail, Shi Bi continued, "If we become the final winner, Even if the Mongolian tribes in the north of the desert are dissatisfied, they won't be able to gather in a short period of time without someone to carry the burden. This will create time for us to defeat them one by one. At that time, we can pull in one group and fight another group. With a group watching from the sidelines, the problem here will be solved. Good. Yang Chendong slapped the armrest of the chair and stood up. Very good. Looks like Vice Commander Sihaba already has a plan in mind. That's very good. How about this, tell me the details of the situation. If we agree to Sihaba's request and join forces with them, we can guarantee that we can deal a heavy blow to both sides and dominate. Yes, then Sihaba will tell the sixth young master. The plan is still not fully developed. If there are any parts that are not suitable, I hope the sixth young master can give me some pointers. Sihaba's face was also filled with excitement. No matter how good the idea was, it had to be approved before it could be realized. Now that Yang Chendong had said so, the success rate of this matter was undoubtedly higher. In the following time, the two of them chatted in the tent for a long time. Dinner was directly sent in. Even so, they still talked until the soldiers had gone to sleep. In the middle of the night, Sihaba and Tiger's Mane, as well as the leader of the ferocious tiger regiment, Xiao Feng, left the tent. Although it was already very late, the faces of the three officers were filled with excitement. It was obvious that this meeting was very successful, achieving their long-cherished wish. Chapter 867. On the second day, Sherbet woke up early. As the representative of the mercenaries in the negotiation, he finally gave the Sihaba emissary an accurate reply. The mercenary supported the final battle and would stand firmly on Sihaba's side to deal with Fan Yuhai, an outsider. The messenger naturally left in high spirits. He returned to Sihaba's camp and reported the accurate information he just received. In the main tent, Sihaba laughed loudly. Good, it seems like the great Ming's loyal duke is very sensible. He knows that we are the orthodox and the ruler here. Yes. The messenger walked forward with a flattering face and said, even if the great Ming's loyal duke is powerful, it's only in the great Ming. Like us nomads, we don't even have a city. They won't pay attention to such a place. So in the negotiation, they only propose that once they help us defeat Fan Yuhai, they hope that both sides will not invade each other in the future. If they are willing, they can even engage in friendly trade. Ha ha ha, it seems like the great Ming's loyal duke is also a person with ideas. He doesn't want to waste his energy on us. That's right. He has the Ming dynasty behind him. I think he should be very interested in the throne. Why would he look at a poor place like ours? However, there's no need to engage in trade. I heard that although their things are good, they are very expensive. If we need them, there's no need to buy them. We can just rob them. As for not invading each other, we will agree to it first. As for whether it will be forever, it will depend on the changes in the situation before we make the final decision. Oh. I wonder what the general means. The messenger seemed to not understand, but he also seemed to have understood. However, at this moment, in order to flatter, he pretended to ask for advice. The situation is always changing. If the great Ming's messenger comes and is willing to give us more things, then we might as well join hands with them to deal with this loyal duke. You have to know that the Han people have a saying that there are no eternal friends and no eternal enemies. There are only eternal benefits. Ha ha ha. Sihaba laughed happily at his own cleverness. The messenger on the side said in an exaggerated manner, brilliant, truly brilliant. General, you are young and promising. With your leadership in the future, our Mongol tribe in the north of the desert will become stronger. It is not impossible for us to recover the glory of Genghis Khan. Ha, ha ha ha. Sihaba, who was in a good mood, couldn't stop laughing. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and said, if you want to truly unify the Mongol tribes in the north of the desert, you have to be a member of the Golden Family. Otherwise, no one will acknowledge you in their hearts. By the way, is there any news about the search for Princess Tuoya? Not yet. I'm just afraid that even if we find her, she won't easily bow down to us. The emissary shook his head and said, once Fan Yuhai is defeated and the Duke of Loyalty is chased away, there will only be a featherless Kaghan left. He won't be able to pose any threat. Even if he can survive this final battle, whether he can survive or not is another matter. At that time, Princess Tuoya will no longer have a father, and many things will not be up to her to decide. Humph. At this moment, Sihaba had gradually revealed his fox tail and revealed his ambitions. Previously, when he allowed Tuoya to leave, it was not because he was afraid of her, but because he was not strong enough. If he fell out at that time, some people would inevitably think that he was too domineering, and would not join hands with him. However, once he defeated Fan Yuhai and grasped the general situation, he would not have so many misgivings when doing certain things. How about this? Send out some people, you must find Princess Tuoya's location. Yes, General, this subordinate understands. The emissary nodded and quickly left. There was no one else in the tent, and Sihaba's face was gloomy. Duke of Loyalty, oh Duke of Loyalty, you're only a so-so. You're willing to send troops to help me so easily. This is the strength of your Han people, but also your weakness. This time, I'll teach you how to be a person, ha ha ha. It was no wonder that Sihaba was so excited. In the eyes of the Mongol people, the Han people were people with a broad mind. Especially those who had the ability to become kings or emperors. Their Han people's Confucianism emphasized on having a broad mind, accepting all rivers into the sea, and helping the world and people. They preferred to provide help in times of need, as if only by doing so could they show their wisdom and greatness. This was both a strength and a weakness. Just like the Mongols of the past, when they were weak, they would ask for help from the Han people. As long as they put on a pitiful look, and said a few words of flattery and worship, they would receive a lot of help. Once they became strong, it would be time for them to point their troops at the Han people. If they won, it would be a good thing, but even if they lost, it was not a big deal. At most, they would just lower their heads and admit their mistakes. After all, this was what their ancestors did, and it was not shameful. Clearly, this Duke of Loyalty had such an impression in Sihaba's heart. As for whether Yang Chendong would play any tricks, Sihaba did not think otherwise. The promises of the Han people were still very reassuring. Presumably, this Duke of Loyalty was a person with big plans, and would not go back on his words. Of course, Yang Chendong would not go back on his words. Since he had promised Sihaba that he would send troops, he would definitely send troops. However, what kind of troops, and how much effort, was another matter altogether. Was Yang Chendong a Han? The answer was definitely yes. However, he was different from most Han leaders. He had a dark side in his heart, a cunning side, and even a black-bellied side. History had already told him how much he had suffered when dealing with foreign countries. As someone who came from the future, Yang Chendong would definitely not walk the same path as his ancestors. After doing something, they would regret it for the rest of their lives, and even harm their descendants. What he wanted to do was to do whatever was beneficial to him. As for whether or not it would attract the curses of others, he did not care so much. Who cared if the flood would reach the heavens after his death? What he wanted to do now was to lay down a solid and unshakable foundation for the Han people. As for the future generations who were ignorant and incompetent, and wanted to lose this foundation, that was not something he could care about. He only needed to do his best. At the very least, the bigger the foundation, the slower the speed of squandering. At the very least, the Han people had once reached the peak of this world, so he could not be considered to have made a trip to this world. Under the scheming of each side, the weak alliance was formed, and the next thing to do was to wait for the day of the final battle. 4 days later, under Sihaba's deliberate pressure, in the grasslands 2 li west of Enma River, in front of the temporary capital built by Bal Skentan at the end of the Yuan dynasty, his 35,000 cavalry faced off against Fan Yuhai's 40,000 cavalry. The sun was high up in the sky, shining down on every single one of the cavalrymen, giving them a very hot feeling. However, the 70,000 warriors acted as if they did not hear anything. At this moment, both sides were staring at each other. Crossbows and sabers were in their hands, and they looked like they were ready to make the final charge at any time. Fan Yuhai rode on his warhorse. Clad in full armor, he narrowed his eyes at the ferocious Sihaba. He did not know why, but he had a very bad feeling. Logically speaking, he had 5,000 more cavalrymen than the other side, and he should be more confident in himself. However, looking at the other side, Sihaba's face was clearly calm and composed. This was not the kind of confidence that was faked, but true confidence. Just based on this, the other side should have something to rely on. Could it be that he has invited another Mongol tribe to help him? Fan Yuhai thought so in his heart, but soon he shook his head. He didn't think that any tribe would be stupid enough to interfere when the outcome of the battle was still undecided. After all, preserving one's strength and waiting to reap the benefits should be what smart people and wise people would do. If this was not the reason, then what was the reason? Could it be that Sihaba was stupid? Did he really think that his 35,000 cavalrymen could defeat his 40,000 army? Unable to figure it out, Fan Yuhai felt very annoyed. He didn't like this feeling. He even regretted capturing Sud Khan and holding the emperor to order his vassals. Originally, he thought that this was a chance for him to control the Mongolian tribe in the north of the desert. Who would have thought that Suder would pretend to take medicine and deceive him? Then, Tuoya learned the truth and escaped. Finally, a reckless and difficult Sihaba jumped out. This person was like a cockroach. His vitality was extremely tenacious, and he liked to charge forward. In the face of absolute strength, many of Fan Yuhai's schemes could not be executed. Everything was so unsatisfactory, and in the end, it had reached the point where he had to fight with Sihaba. This caused Fan Yuhai to feel extremely annoyed. Fan Yuhai was more skilled in scheming and studying people's hearts. He hid behind the scenes and played tricks while others fought and killed in front of him. But now, he was forced to the front line, and it was a decisive battle. This was not what he was good at. Fortunately, Fan Yuhai still had a trump card, such as Sud Khan in his hands. This hostage was only useful on the battlefield. Now that the decisive battle was about to begin, it was time to push him out. Men, summon the Khan. Fan Yuhai's voice came out clearly from his mouth. Yes. General Zhang Meng replied and turned to leave. In a short while, Sud Khan rode onto the battlefield under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Sud's gunshot wound had long since healed. After all, it wasn't a serious injury, and the bullet didn't hit his body. If it wasn't for Fan Yuhai's tricks, he could have even stood up and led the entire tribe, looking for an opportunity to rise again. Chapter 868. However, under the current circumstances, Suda knew that the so-called rising of the Eastern Mountain was nothing more than a dream. Based on what Fan Yuhai had done to him, he hated him, and Fan Yuhai knew this as well. Fan Yuhai would definitely not let him live. The only reason he was still sitting on the horse was because he was still useful. As soon as Suda appeared, the cavalry opened up a path for him, allowing him to easily reach Fan Yuhai's side. Following this, the devil's voice sounded in his ears, "Go and shout, tell them to put down their weapons and surrender with the identity of the Khan. Otherwise, it would be tantamount to betraying the entire Mongol tribe, and they would be killed without mercy. Don't think about playing any tricks, otherwise, I can guarantee that you will die miserably. Go." There was a smile on his face, but his words were incomparably vicious. When Suda heard this, he couldn't help but tremble. This person was a devil, and it was because of his existence that the Mongol tribes in the north of the Gobi Desert had been killing each other. Under the intense internal friction, the originally prosperous Gobi Desert Mongol tribes had suffered a huge drop in strength. He had never treated the Mongol cavalry as his brothers. He had only treated them as killing weapons in his hands. If such a person were to rule over the entire tribe, it would bring about disastrous consequences. The entire tribe might even fall into a state of eternal damnation because of this. This was what Suitor was thinking, and it was also the conclusion that he had come to after these days of analysis. Hearing his reminder, Suda nodded and rode his horse forward. He stopped about 40 meters away from Zhao Hai. At this position, Suitor could even feel a few crossbows pointing at him. If he dared to charge forward, he would immediately become a porcupine. Suitor would not do such a risky thing. He did not think that he would be safe just because he had escaped to Sihaba's side. Sihaba was also a hungry wolf, and if there was a chance, he would also viciously take a bite out of him. Suitor stopped his horse and looked up at the grassland sky. For some reason, at this moment, he felt that the sky was so blue, so clear, and so beautiful. However, all of this beauty was about to leave him. In his heart, he knew that this might be the last time he saw the blue sky of Mongolia. Longevity Heaven, wait for me. Your believer is coming for you. Suitor, who was looking up, suddenly seemed to have changed into a different person. His fatigued look had completely disappeared, and his eyes shone brightly as he looked at the tens of thousands of Mongolian cavalrymen. Suddenly, he shouted out, "Warriors, you are the pride of our Mongolian tribe, and you are the future of our tribe. Now, as the Khan, I order you for the last time. Kill this devil behind me who is eyeing our foundation. Kill Fan Yuhai and avenge your dead brothers and loved ones. Kill." Ah! Suitor, who had just raised his arm, suddenly felt his back tighten. Then, a few more arrows landed on his body at the same time. Due to the arrows, his strength was rapidly draining away. Is it finally going to end? Suitor asked himself, but there was no pain on his face. Instead, there was a slight smile on his face. It was a smile of someone who had completely let go of everything and was completely relaxed. His life was finally coming to an end. But at the last moment, he exposed Fan Yuhai's wild ambition. It could be considered as his last contribution to the Mongolian tribe in the north of the Gobi Desert. He did not lose his dignity as a Khan. Longevity Heaven, I'm coming. The Khan of the Mongolian tribe of Gobi had his life ended just like that. It also marked the end of an era. Suitor was dead, and one of the arrows was from Fan Yuhai, who was 40 meters behind him. He did not expect that this old man would be so fearless of death. He dared to say such words at the end. These words had greatly shaken the morale of his troops, and could cause him to fall into eternal damnation. On the other side of the camp, Sihaba was laughing so hard that he could not close his mouth. Originally, he was still thinking about how to deal with Suitor after this victory. He would definitely not allow such a person to step on his head, so killing this person was something that had to be done. The difficult part was how to kill him silently, and not have anything to do with him. For this, he had given orders to many of his generals to do it secretly. Now, he did not need to think about it anymore. Fan Yuhai had done what he wanted to do the most for him. Now, he just needed to use this momentum to take the initiative to send out his troops. Warriors of the grasslands, you've all heard the Khan's final words. This Fan Yuhai is a foreign race, and his existence is a disaster for our tribe. Now, the Khan has used his life to tell us the truth. Now, let's kill this demon together. Kill! Kill! The 35,000 Mongol cavalry all roared out, and the vanguard of the 10,000 cavalry charged towards Fan Yuhai's army. Dust flew into the air, and the final battle had begun. Fan Yuhai's face was ashen. The development of the situation was completely out of his expectations. Suitor's appearance made him feel like he had smashed his own foot with a rock. But now that things had come to this, there was no point in saying anything. At this moment, he raised the saber in his hand and pointed it forward, shouting, "Brothers, let's kill together. We have more people than them. As long as we win this battle, everyone will enjoy endless glory and wealth. Here, I swear to everlasting heaven that I will never let you down. Kill." General Lu Duo took this opportunity to shout, and led the 10,000 vanguard cavalry who had already disobeyed Shangda Khan to charge forward. Fan Yuhai swore a deadly oath, and barely managed to stabilize the morale of his troops. But he knew that this was far from enough. After all, Suitor's identity was there. After being the Khan for so many years, his influence on the entire tribe must be huge. But it did not matter. As long as he could defeat Sihaba and use facts to prove everything, there was still a chance for him to turn the tables. 20,000 cavalrymen clashed on the vast grasslands. Sabers and spears clashed, drums sounded like thunder. The cavalrymen surged on the battlefield, and the smell of blood filled the air. Sihaba watched as the 10,000 cavalrymen charged into the formation but did not gain any advantage. He could not help but ask the messenger beside him anxiously, "Didn't you say that the Duke of Loyalty agreed to work with us? Why haven't we seen them yet?" This. The messenger was sweating profusely. He did not know how to explain himself. "Humph. Don't tell me they were scared away." Sihaba scolded angrily. "Oh no, they have sent more troops." At this moment, a general's shout attracted Sihaba's attention. As expected, Fan Yuhai had increased the number of troops again. Perhaps Fan Yuhai also knew where their advantage lay. It was precisely the additional 5,000 cavalrymen. Based on this alone, they could completely use this advantage to completely defeat Sihaba. Only by doing so could they eliminate the negative effects of Suda's words before his death. "We will send more troops too. Then immediately send someone to contact the Duke of Loyalty. What are they doing?" At this point, Sihaba had no other choice. He could only accompany Fan Yuhai in sending more troops. But he did not forget to ask for Yang Chendong's help. This was his trump card. With the agreement of both sides, another 10,000 soldiers were sent into the battlefield. It was said that more than 10,000 soldiers were boundless. At this moment, 40,000 cavalrymen were fighting together. The scene was spectacular. It was fortunate that this was the grassland, the source of the earth was vast. Otherwise, even if these people stood there without moving, they would not be able to stand on any ordinary terrain. The sound of fighting continued. Every moment, there would be a grassland warrior falling off his horse. Every second, there would be a life lost. Human life was precious, but sometimes, it was also fragile. Just like in war, human life was always the most worthless existence. A general's success was built on the death of 10,000 soldiers. Often, a victory was built on the blood and lives of countless people. It was so tragic. It could be said that those who had never fought in war would never know the preciousness of peace. True peace also required countless martyrs to pay the price of countless lives in exchange for it. At this point, as a retired Special Forces soldier, Langzi expressed his highest respect to the martyrs of the revolution. On the battlefield, the chaotic battle continued. It had been more than 6 hours, but both sides were still locked in a stalemate. Neither side had a strong advantage. The stalemate continued. Sihaba was like an ant on a hot pan. He was extremely anxious. The reinforcements had not arrived yet. If the battle continued, he was afraid that he would be the one to lose. However, what he didn't know was that 50 miles away from them, the mercenaries were slowly making their way over. According to Yang Chendong himself, he would form an alliance with Sihaba and send troops. But when the troops would be sent was up to him. Sihaba obviously wanted to use him. He even wanted to take care of him after defeating Fan Yuhai. Since that was the case, how could he let others do as they wished? He was a person who was not afraid of things getting out of hand. So, he was quite satisfied with the delayed reinforcements. Oh, it meant that it was quite slow. Send someone to inform Sihaba that we're already on our way to the battlefield. We'll be there soon. Tell him to hold on. Riding on the white dragon horse, Yang Chendong looked at the midsummer scenery of the grassland while speaking with a relaxed expression. Yes. Instead of saluting, he immediately arranged for a scout to go ahead and report first. Beside Yang Chendong, Tiger's Mane laughed loudly. Young master, you are the one who is really watching from the sidelines. But if Sihaba were to know that while we were aiding them, we also sent people to destroy their rear rations, I'm afraid he would have the heart to kill us. Ha ha ha. Chapter 869. That's right, just now, the new direct subordinate regiment was sent out. Their target was the supply base behind Sihaba. Once they occupied that place and the news spread, the military camp would definitely be shaken. One could only imagine what kind of expression Sihaba would have. You can't blame the young master for being ruthless. They were the ones who targeted me first. Do they think it's that easy to hire us mercenaries? How can I not get some interest? Yang Chendong said leisurely as he rode on his horse. When the corps officers of the new army heard this, their hearts trembled. In the future, no one should ever think of messing with the sixth young master. Otherwise, the consequences would be very dire. Of course, they were also glad that they were the sixth young master's men and not his enemies. The army was still advancing at a steady pace. Every 15 minutes, there would be scouts coming to report the situation at the front. From this, it could be seen that Yang Chendong was still paying attention to the situation at all times. Once there was any hint of deviation from his plan, he would immediately adjust the military deployment. He walked slowly and saw that it was already afternoon. In another 2 hours, it would be evening. He looked at Tiger's Mane and asked, "How is it? How's the new army's night training? Can you ensure that the night's battle is normal?" "No problem." Tiger's Mane patted his chest and replied. "Our soldiers' meals are good and their nutrition can keep up. There are no longer any problems with night blindness. In addition to the recent assault training, although they still can't attack as freely as they can during the day, fighting at night and killing the enemy is no longer a problem." "Good, that's good. Tonight, there should be a chance for you to perform." Yang Chendong nodded happily. Now that everything was ready, all he had to do was wait for the sky to turn dark and he would charge into the battlefield and show off his skills. However, as the saying went, plans can't keep up with changes. Just as Yang Chendong led the army to the battlefield, a scout suddenly reported that a third force had suddenly charged into the battlefield. There were at least 10,000 cavalrymen and they were attacking Fan Yuhai together with Sihaba. Now, this famous general was forced to send another 10,000 cavalrymen to the battlefield to stabilize the situation. A third force? Who is it? This change was out of Yang Chendong's expectations. He didn't think that anyone would join the battle at this time. Before the outcome of the battle was decided, who would be so stupid to do something that would not benefit them? "I don't know, we're still investigating." The scout shook his head, he couldn't answer this question. "Investigate again." Yang Chendong's expression became much more serious. While he dismissed the scout, he also ordered the army to speed up some things. The sudden change had disrupted his plans. He had no choice but to arrive at the battlefield ahead of time. Only in this way could he deal with the changes by remaining unchanged. Fortunately, not long after, the scout brought back new information. The situation of the new force that had joined the battlefield had been clarified. It was Princess Tuoya. "It's her?" When he heard the news, Yang Chendong's expression quickly became as calm as before. He said, "She must have wanted to save her father. Unfortunately, Fan Yuhai's movements were too fast. she was still a step too late. This sixth young master, if this is the case, I'm afraid that Princess Tuoya will risk her life against the enemy. She only has 10,000 cavalrymen. If placed on the battlefield, she won't be of much use. Besides, with Sahaba's character, he will definitely treat her and her cavalrymen as cannon fodder. You see. Beside him, Shibi also considered the seriousness of the problem. That's right. Yang Chendong nodded his head. In his plan, Tuoya had nothing to do with this battle. This woman was prepared to be dealt with at the very end. However, since the battlefield had changed, he also had to change accordingly. How about this? Immediately order the recruits at the vanguard to speed up and rush to the battlefield as soon as possible. Tell them to do their best to protect the two wings of Princess Tuoya's army. Everything will be decided when the army arrives. Understood. Shibi nodded her head and urged her horse forward. At this moment, on the battlefield, as Yang Chendong expected, Sahaba had indeed treated this woman and the cavalrymen she brought with her as cannon fodder. When faced with Fan Yuhai's reinforcement of 10,000 cavalrymen, not only did he not increase the number of troops, he instead ordered the cavalrymen to retreat as much as possible, leaving the main battlefield to Tuoya and Fan Yuhai's cavalrymen. Sahaba's plan was naturally good. He would first allow these two opponents to fight. When the time came, regardless of which side was exhausted, it would be a good thing for him. Originally, this plan was left for the mercenaries. However, since they hadn't arrived yet, he decided to let Tuoya have a taste of this feeling first. On the battlefield, Tuoya and Na Ri Song led 10,000 cavalrymen and continuously rushed forward. Facing Fan Yuhai's cavalrymen, they didn't retreat a single step. The decisive battle was about to begin. Tuoya naturally had inquired about the situation long ago. Her initial thoughts could be said to be the same as Yang Chendong's. Both of them wanted to take advantage of this dogfight to make their move. If they could use this opportunity to rescue Sud Khan, that would naturally be the best thing to do. No matter how much she thought about it, she didn't expect Sud Khan to stop enduring at the final moment. Not only that, he even angered Fan Yuhai with his words and was shot to death on the battlefield. When Tuoya, who was also several tens of li away, learned of this misfortune, she almost fainted. Soon after, she led her army and rushed over without any regard for anything else. She wanted to kill Fan Yuhai with her own hands and avenge her father. Tuoya's appearance on the battlefield a step ahead had indeed caught both sides unprepared. It was just that one side was endlessly happy, while the other was cursing his bad luck. Brandishing her blade, she charged forward on the battlefield like a man. Tuoya, who had been practicing horsemanship since young and even had several masters, indeed had the side of a woman. After just a few charges, she had already lost 3 cavalrymen. However, she still didn't feel tired and continued to charge forward on her horse. Even if she wanted to kill, the number of cavalrymen under Fan Yuhai's command was too great. A total of 30,000 cavalrymen had been sent out. Even if there were some casualties, the remaining number wasn't something Tuoya could compare to. Coupled with Sahaba's intentional retreat, Tuoya's army was already very close to being surrounded. Princess, that son of Abi** Tch Sahaba has retreated his army behind us. We are about to be surrounded. Na Ri Song brandished his blade and cut down another cavalryman. He then came to Tuoya's side and spoke with a slightly nervous tone. It's fine. In this matter, we have the same goal as Sahaba. As long as we are really in danger, he will definitely save us. He only wants to exhaust us, not eliminate us. So tell the brothers to just charge forward. Tuoya's face didn't reveal the slightest bit of fear. At this moment, the hatred for her father's death had already filled her heart. She even had the will to die and only thought of killing Fan Yuhai. She didn't care about anything else. Tuoya had already gone crazy. Na Ri-song could only shake his head and smile bitterly when facing such a princess. He then said to the bodyguards beside him, "No matter what, we have to protect the princess's safety. If it really doesn't work, we will kill our way out." Understood. The other bodyguards nodded in agreement. They then guarded Tuoya's left and right so that she wouldn't be disturbed and wouldn't have to worry about the safety of the flanks. Even though the protection was already very thorough, Tuoya's army still started to suffer large-scale casualties in the face of Fan Yuhai's army that was at least twice their size. When the military strength was inferior and the combat strength was equal, the side with more people would usually have the advantage. Charge! Just as Na Ri-song was about to consider whether or not they should retreat and forcefully leave with Princess Tuoya, another cavalry troop appeared not far away. Looking from afar, their uniform military green uniforms were like a green sea as they charged toward the center of the battlefield. The first batch of mercenary reinforcements finally appeared. The one leading the troop was the new army's division commander, Lu Zhua. All of the 6,100 men under him moved out and rushed over. The first lineup was the new army division. This was Yang Chendong's idea. He didn't want Zihaba to see through his real situation. The first army to be sent out was also the weakest. The new army division appeared. They didn't adopt the strategy of fighting at the tip of the arrow. Instead, they maintained a cavalry formation with 400 men in a battalion. They scattered the cavalry that Fan Yuhai had arranged on the periphery and rushed into the formation, arriving at Princess Tuoya's side. Then, the army slowed down and maintained contact with each other, protecting the princess's safety. "It's the mercenaries." When he saw these special military uniforms, Na Ri-song recognized their identity. But what he didn't expect was that they actually came to protect the princess. When he saw that apart from the front, the left and right wings, as well as the back, there were organized mercenary cavalry troops protecting them, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. Naturally, Princess Tuoya also noticed the newcomers. At first, she still held her blade horizontally in front of her, assuming a defensive stance. From a certain perspective, she and Yang Chendong were still enemies. Who knew if they would attack her when they appeared? The battle situation changed once again. When Fan Yuhai saw this from the rear, his expression became even more unsightly. Originally, he was still very confident in dealing with Zihaba alone. Even if Princess Tuoya's 10,000 men were added, he still wouldn't be afraid. After all, this kind of allied army wasn't united, so there was a chance to break them down one by one. But now, the sudden appearance of the mercenary army made him feel an enormous pressure. Others didn't know about the strength of the mercenary army, but he had experienced it a long time ago. He was a witness to the destruction of Jiaozhi. It was also at that time that he became an orphan and began to wander the world. Now that his old enemy was in front of him, Fan Yuhai really wanted to fight to his heart's content and avenge the enmity of that day. But in the end, reason won over impulse. He didn't have the confidence to fight 1 against 3. Pass down the order. Slowly retreat. Do your best to leave the battlefield and look for an opportunity to fight again. Chapter 870. Fan Yuhai was still able to see the big picture. When he realized that the situation wasn't good, he didn't waste words or think too much. All he did was to protect himself. When Zihaba finally saw the mercenary reinforcements appear, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. This was a chance to deal a heavy blow to the mercenaries. He quickly ordered his cavalry to retreat and watch the battle from the sidelines. Before he could give the order, he suddenly realized that Fan Yuhai's cavalry was retreating frantically, wanting to leave the battlefield. How could Zihaba let that happen? If he couldn't take down this powerful enemy today, it would be even more difficult to find such an opportunity in the future. Send 10,000 cavalry to the enemy's flanks. No matter what, we can't let them escape. The rest of you, charge with me. Sihaba finally made the decision to charge with the entire army. In his eyes, the mercenaries and Tuoya were far less of a threat than Fan Yuhai. Sihaba's entire army moved out. The cavalry that had just retreated once again charged onto the battlefield. They attacked together with Tuoya and the mercenaries, chasing after Fan Yuhai's army for a long time. With the three parties joining forces, the pressure on Fan Yuhai's army, which originally had a slight advantage, increased greatly. Their military strength was inferior, and their morale was inferior. The control of the battlefield quickly changed hands. From the initial planned retreat, it became a real retreat. Hold on, hold on. Fan Yuhai saw the sudden change in the situation. Facing the pressure of the three parties, he knew that he would definitely lose if the battle continued. He had no choice but to shout in a futile attempt to stabilize the situation. At the same time, he called for Zhang Meng and Lu Duo to discuss the matter of breaking out of the encirclement. We can't. The battlefield is extremely disadvantageous for us. The morale of the soldiers has been shaken. If we continue fighting, we will definitely lose. We have to break out of the encirclement before they reach us. After calling for the two generals, Fan Yuhai immediately announced his decision. All right, we will break out of the encirclement. Although they were unwilling, they no longer had the right to choose. Fortunately, they had been prepared for this. The 5,000 cavalry that Fan Yuhai had with him from the beginning had been used as a backup. Now was the time to put them to use. Under the lead of the two generals, Zhang Meng and Lu Duo, the 5,000 cavalrymen once again began to flee. Once upon a time, Fan Yuhai had relied on these people to successfully slip away from the eyes of the mercenaries. When two small countries were destroyed and the alliance of three small countries was defeated, he was still unharmed. Unfortunately, this time, they were facing the grassland cavalry that was determined to kill them. How could it be easy for them to escape? Since they were all cavalrymen, their advantage in speed was gone. Even though these 5,000 men were extremely elite, regardless of weapons and equipment, they were superior to ordinary cavalry. However, when faced with Tuoya who was bent on vengeance, Lu Zhuo who had received his orders, and the Sihaba army who wanted to eliminate this calamity, they only managed to charge out for less than a li before they were entangled again. Moreover, the cavalry behind them was still increasing in number. General, please leave. Leave this place to me. At the crucial moment, Zhang Meng took the initiative to step forward. He led 3,000 cavalrymen to bring up the rear, blocking off the Mongol pursuers behind them. Take care of yourself. Lu Duo, let's go. After saying such a meaningless sentence, Fan Yuhai turned around and left. In his eyes, the life and death of others were never important. The most important thing was whether he could survive or not. Zhang Meng stayed behind, using his body to block off the three armies. He used his flesh and blood to build a great wall, fighting to the death without retreating an inch. He created layers of obstacles for the three armies, angering Tuoya so much that she screamed crazily. However, there was still no trace of him. Even though the recruits trained hard, most of the soldiers lacked battle experience. Facing Zhang Meng and his elites, they could not exert much strength. This scene was seen by Sihaba who was following behind them. It was said that the mercenaries were strong, good at fighting, and had excellent equipment. Especially their commander, Duke Zhongdan, who was well versed in the art of war. It was difficult for him to lose. However, when he saw it for himself, Sihaba's heart was completely at ease. He did not know about the others, but at the very least, the strength of the mercenaries in front of him was very ordinary. There was still a large gap between their strength and his estimation. If that's the strength of the mercenaries, then it's not a big deal. Men, gather the prisoners on the battlefield. We need to strengthen ourselves. General, aren't we going to give chase? One of the Kiliarchs asked with a perplexed expression. Chase my ass. There's no chance now. It's more important to strengthen ourselves. Sihaba shook his head. Fan Yuhai's escape was already beyond his reach. Since that was the case, why not face reality and strengthen themselves first? With the order given, Sihaba's army stopped chasing and started to surround the Mongol cavalry that Fan Yuhai had left behind. With the pressure in front of him reduced, Zhang Meng had finally completed his mission and created enough time for Fan Yuhai to leave. However, after a bitter battle, he did not have many soldiers by his side. When Nadarisong and Lu Zhuo joined forces to attack him, after several clashes, his chest was slashed by a sharp saber, revealing the white bones inside. Zhang Meng was seriously injured. Nadarisong and Lu Zhuo were struck while the iron was still hot. They attacked him continuously, adding new wounds to his left and right arms. Just when he didn't even have the strength to pick up his saber, Tuoya appeared in front of him. It was this Zhang Meng. Normally, he used the excuse of protecting her father's safety, but secretly spied on her. Tuoya had long hated this person. Since he couldn't catch up to Fan Yuhai, he might as well make an example out of this person. He raised the shiny saber high up and brought it down ruthlessly. Zhang Meng was dead. Fresh blood splattered on Princess Tuoya's face. It was warm, but it also carried her tears. With Zhang Meng dead, the resistance of Fan Yuhai's troops immediately fell into disorder. Other than half of the cavalry who escaped when they saw that the situation was not good, the rest were surrounded by Sihaba's troops and were forced to surrender. At this moment, Sihaba was no longer satisfied with these ordinary captives. He set his sights on Princess Tuoya. Su Dening became the Khan of the Mongol tribe in the north of the desert and was respected by the people. Very few people rebelled. The biggest reason was that he had the blood of the Golden family flowing in his body, which was why he was recognized by everyone. If Sihaba wanted to lead these Mongol tribes, there were only two paths he could take. The first was to kill these tribes until they trembled in fear, and then use his powerful strength to force them to surrender. However, in this way, the Mongol tribes in the north of the desert would be greatly weakened. Once other great powers got involved, it would be difficult to resist the enemy. The second path was much more peaceful. He only needed to marry Tuoya and let their child become a Khan. In this way, it was equivalent to having the power of the bloodline. Naturally, he would have a powerful rallying power. How could Sihaba not be moved when he could get a beauty and also obtain great power? Now that the situation was settled, it was the best time to capture Tuoya. Therefore, his army surrounded her. Because Lu Zhuo was too close to them, he was unfortunately surrounded as well. Little sister Tuoya, now that the situation is settled, the murderer of the Khan has been beaten to death by my army. Your great hatred can be considered avenged. Thinking about it, a girl like you must have had a hard time. Why don't you come to my tent and take a short rest? Sihaba continued to flatter himself, shamelessly speaking. How could Tuoya not see through Sihaba's little tricks? If it was said that she originally had a good impression of this childhood friend of hers, it had disappeared in the battle just now. He actually allowed her and Fan Yuhai to fight to the death. Not only did he not help, he even ordered his troops to retreat. If it wasn't for the timely appearance of the mercenaries, most of the cavalrymen she brought with her would have been killed. At that time, would he still be so courteous with her? Many thanks for General Sihaba's good intentions, but my father's blood hatred has not been completely avenged. Fan Yuhai is still fleeing and I still have to lead the army to chase after him. I will come back to thank the general when I have the chance in the future. Tuoya threw down these words and prepared to leave. Wait. Seeing that Tuoya had actually rejected him, it was clear that she refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Sihaba finally revealed his true colors. Little sister Tuoya, I will immediately send people to handle the matter of chasing after him. I believe that it won't be long before there is news. Now, please come to my tent to rest. Men, please come with the princess. Who dares? Since the soft approach didn't work, he had to use the hard approach. Without waiting for the cavalry to move, Narisong shouted and came to Tuoya's side, standing with his sword. After this battle, although their strength had been damaged, they still had more than 6,000 cavalry. It was enough to kill a bloody path out. Oh! Little sister Tuoya, must you reject my good intentions? Don't you know who has the final say now? Do you really think that you can break out of this general's encirclement with just your cavalry? Or do you think that these people are willing to give their lives for you? Sihaba said in a mocking tone. His gaze then landed on the cavalry that followed Tuoya. I don't care what you have done before, but now, I want to take the princess as my wife. As long as you don't stop me, no one will do anything to you. Think about it, you are just ordinary soldiers. Is it worth it to give up your lives for a fallen person? Su Dakan is already dead. Who can see your loyalty? Sihaba did indeed have some ability. He knew the importance of people's hearts. At this moment, when he suddenly said such words, the situation suddenly changed. The cavalry that was brought by Tuoya and Narisong all had complicated expressions. Chapter 871. Among them, many of them were willing to follow them because of the hope in their hearts. Once they rescued Su Dakan, they would make a great contribution and obtain countless benefits. But now, knowing that Su Dakan was dead, and more importantly, Sihaba, who had the upper hand, could decide their life and death. If they continued to fight, why would they die? At least half of the 7,000 cavalrymen were persuaded by Sihaba. When Na Raizong saw this change, he sighed. If this was really the case, not to mention threatening Sihaba, it was hard to say if they could even escape. In contrast, Tuoya's expression was normal. Perhaps the blow from her father's death was too heavy that she lost her will to live, or perhaps she had a better understanding of the human heart. Facing the cavalryman who suddenly disobeyed her orders, she did not show much panic. Instead, she turned her wrist and placed the saber on her neck. Sihaba, don't you want to marry me to control the entire tribe? Fine, if I die in front of you, what else can you do? You can't. Seeing Tuoya place the saber on her neck, Na Raizong cried out in alarm. Sihaba's expression was similarly frightening. He did not expect Tuoya to be so unyielding. Even if she died, she would not marry him. For a moment, he was in a dilemma. All right, nothing must happen to the princess, and nothing will happen to her. This is the war god's request. Lu Zhua, who had seen everything, could not help but shake his head after seeing the change in the situation. Then, he finally opened his mouth to speak. When Lu Zhua spoke, Sihaba, who did not know what to do, immediately found an outlet to vent. He looked at Lu Zhua and reprimanded, "What are you trying to do? War god?" The war god said he wanted to form an alliance with us and sent 6,000 of you. Now that we have won the battle, you still want to give orders? Let me tell you, this is wishful thinking. This is the prairie, not the great Ming dynasty. Facing Sihaba's rebuke, Lu Zhua's face didn't turn red, his heart didn't beat fast, and his expression was normal. No matter where it is, the word of the war god is valid. Anyone who wants to challenge his authority is the enemy of all of us mercenaries. Only after he finished speaking did the 6,000 new recruits he brought raise their cavalry swords. It was as if they were going to fight to the death with whoever dared to step forward. Compared to the cavalry brought by Tuoya, the movements of the 6,000 mercenary recruits were uniform, and their thoughts were also highly unified. This scene made Na Raizong extremely envious. He had to admit that in terms of leading an army, the war god was indeed more capable than ordinary people. Fan Yuhai abandoned the 3,000 cavalrymen and Zhang Meng. Under Lu Duo's protection, he led the 2,000 cavalrymen away. At this moment, the sky was close to dusk, and it was about to get dark. At that time, as long as they didn't light a fire, they could use the night to escape far away without being discovered by anyone. Humph. Ignorant grassland people, one day I will return. At that time, I will kill all of your men and only leave your women for us to reproduce. At that time, you will regret it for the rest of your lives. Fan Yuhai said angrily. Today's defeat not only made his several months of hard work go to waste, but he also lost 3,000 cavalrymen and a valiant general. It was not worth it. Fortunately, he was able to escape in the end. Where there is life, there is hope. With Fan Yuhai's intelligence, it wouldn't be long before he could rise again. Report, there are cavalrymen in front. Report, there are enemies in the left wing. Report, there are enemies in the right wing. Report, there are enemies behind us as well. The scouts' shouts interrupted Fan Yuhai's reverie. At this moment, his expression became extremely tense. If there were only enemies in one direction, it might be a coincidence. But now, there were enemies in several directions, and he was surrounded. This was not a coincidence, but someone's intention. He had clearly charged out of the encirclement, so how could there be enemies here? Fan Yuhai was puzzled, but soon his eyes widened as if he had thought of something. The great Ming's Duke of Loyalty. At this moment, only Yang Chendong could appear outside the battlefield and meticulously design such a complete encirclement in such a short time. What was he trying to do? Was he trying to kill them all? When he thought of how he had caused trouble for others many times, and now that retribution had finally come, Fan Yuhai was no longer as calm and composed as before. He became extremely nervous. Quick, see where there are the least number of enemies. We have to rush out as soon as possible. He still had 2,000 cavalrymen under him, and this was where his confidence came from. As long as they rushed out in time, they could definitely kill their way out. Once they escaped, the vast grassland would be like birds flying in the sky. The scouts were faced with questions, but they could not answer. They were too far away and could only see the shadows of the cavalrymen. As for which direction had the least number of enemies, they really did not know. After glaring angrily at the scouts, Fan Yuhai quickly made a decision to head west. That was the deepest part of the grassland, and it was also the most likely place to avoid all enemies. Once the direction was confirmed, he immediately gave the order, and the 2,000 cavalrymen followed him to the west. Several li away, the direction of Fan Yuhai's army was quickly confirmed and reported to Yang Chendong. They're heading west? Immediately send a light cavalry regiment to chase after them and stick to them. Commander Xiao Feng, everything depends on your ferocious tiger regiment. Come, give each of them 2 warhorses. No matter what, this time, you must leave Fan Yuhai's life behind. Fan Yuhai had repeatedly appeared and caused endless trouble, and Yang Chendong had already lost patience with him. What he needed to do now was to seize this opportunity to prevent future troubles. As for Division Commander Lu Zhua, it was now almost dark, and there would probably be no battle. Moreover, it would not be too late to go over after he had settled the matters here. On the battlefield, Lu Zhua's sudden support for Tuoya had indeed caught Sihaba unprepared. Considering that it was almost dark, he finally gave up on the idea of immediately starting the battle. In the dark, no one could see each other clearly. If Tuoya were to escape, then the gains would not make up for the losses. Men, set up camp and surround this place. Don't let a single person leave. Of course, it's a different story if there are people who surrender. Sihaba glanced at Tuoya again and revealed the laughter of a victor. Let's take advantage of the night and kill our way out. Princess Tuoya gripped the blade at her neck and spoke with a rather heroic spirit. No. Without waiting for Na Raizong to nod, Division Commander Lu Zhua suddenly shook his head. Although he did not know why the 6th young master had yet to appear with his army, he firmly believed that he would not be abandoned. He only needed to wait a little longer. Once the army arrived, all dangers would be resolved. Why? Tuoya asked with a face full of dissatisfaction. Let's wait a little longer. The war god's army is already not far from here. The princess can't bear to see the 3,000 brothers following you die, right? Lu Zhuo knew that it was useless to say more, so he used the cavalry brothers who were still willing to stay behind as a guarantee. Of the 7,000 cavalry soldiers who were still alive, more than half had already been persuaded by Sihaba and left with him. However, there were still 3,000 brothers who stayed behind. Just based on this, the burden on Tuoya's shoulders was still very heavy. How about we wait a little longer? Na Ruizong suggested after muttering to himself for a while. He was not afraid of death. Since he chose to stay behind, he had already disregarded life and death. However, he did not want to die so muddle-headedly like this. If that happened, even if he went to see Su de Khan, he would not have the face to explain himself. Na Ruizong relented. Tuoya nodded after a moment of hesitation. Alright, then let's wait a night. If Sihaba uses force, I will not give him any chance even if I have to commit suicide. The princess's unyielding character is admirable. Lu Zhuo cupped his fists and replied. Then, he arranged for the soldiers to light up a bonfire. This would not only provide warmth in the night, but also illuminate the surroundings to prevent a night attack. Lu Zhuo's every move was very careful. Sihaba did not mind. He still had many things to do. He had recruited 20,000 people in one go. What he needed to do now was to pacify the hearts of these people. Once this matter was settled, when dawn came, he would be able to command these 40,000 men to launch an attack. At that time, the entire Mongol tribe of the Gobi Desert would only respect him. Everyone had their own wishful thinking, and the cavalry formation that had been fighting for the whole day became quiet. Both sides were intentionally restraining themselves, waiting for the arrival of dawn. On the grassland less than 100 li away, at this moment, Fan Yuhai was surrounded by the mercenary cavalry. The speed of the light cavalry was very fast. After figuring out the direction of their escape, they quickly caught up. Relying on the advantage of speed, they quickly entangled Fan Yuhai's troops. The sound of arrows piercing through the air could be heard constantly, greatly slowing down the speed of their advance. Helpless, Fan Yuhai could only divide his troops again. He arranged for Lu Duo to lead 1,000 men to charge out under his banner, attracting the attention of the mercenaries. Facing Fan Yuhai's military order, Lu Duo's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. General, if we combine our forces, we may still be able to fight the enemy. If we split up, I'm afraid we won't even have the strength to fight. Thinking about how Zhang Meng had stayed behind because he had split up his troops, and now that he was probably dead, he did not think highly of splitting up his troops. At worst, he would just stay behind and fight the enemy. Killing one was enough to break even, killing two was still a gain. We can't. If we split up, there is still a chance. If we combine our forces, there will be no chance at all. Lu Duo, are you not going to listen to this general's orders? Didn't you say that your life is mine? Even if you die, you will ensure my safety? At this moment, Fan Yuhai finally revealed his true nature. Chapter 872. Okay, I'll split up. Lu Duo knew that from this moment on, his friendship with Fan Yuhai was completely broken. It was only now that he realized how selfish the person he followed was. He had always been a chess piece in the other person's eyes. Just like that, the 2,000 cavalry were split into two groups. Lu Duo took his people and left under his banner. It did attract a portion of the pursuers, but there were still people chasing after him. Clearly, the strategy of splitting up the troops was just like what Lu Duo said. It was not practical. At least, it was not practical when facing Yang Chendong. Fan Yuhai knew that the biggest crisis of his life was coming. He kept trying to split up 300 men to block the light cavalry regiment's pursuit while thinking of a way to escape into the distance. However, the light cavalry regiment's advantage was that they were fast. It was not something that could be easily shaken off. Ma Xiangshan's light cavalry regiment did not have the intention to fight Fan Yuhai's troops head-on. They just followed from a distance and attacked with bows and arrows. Once they found that the enemy had split up, they would immediately send people to encircle and annihilate them. This kind of divide-and-conquer tactic was very troublesome. The more they split up, the more they would lose. It didn't take long for the 300 cavalry soldiers to be annihilated by the mercenary light cavalry regiment. When they caught up again, Fan Yuhai didn't dare to split his forces. He only rushed towards the west, hoping to find some favorable terrain that could allow him to escape. A person's luck could not be so good forever. Fan Yuhai, who had escaped many times, finally encountered a hard rock. In the early hours of the morning, a large army blocked his path. It was the fierce Tiger Regiment that came here in a roundabout way on Yang Chendong's orders. Commander Xiao Feng had been waiting here for a long time. Finally, the target appeared. Ever since he came to the grasslands, Xiao Feng had yet to show his skills. This time, he held back all his strength. With a loud shout, 1,000 guns fired. The bullets drew a red line across the night sky. Fan Yuhai's troops that were coming from the front were immediately hit hard. Even Fan Yuhai, who was running at the very front, did not fare well. A bullet coincidentally hit his mount, throwing him off his warhorse. Blow the charge horn. Although he couldn't see the situation in front of him clearly due to the distance and the darkness, there was no doubt that the bullet had severely injured the enemy. Immediately, Xiao Feng gave the order to charge. The 3,200 men of the ferocious Tiger Regiment moved out and arrived at the battlefield very quickly. Another round of gunfire rang out, but the enemy cavalry who refused to submit were all killed. Only about 400 of them were left, either injured or scared out of their wits. They knelt on the ground and surrendered. Capture them all. Let's see if Fan Yuhai is dead or not. Xiao Feng commanded the soldiers to quickly enter the battlefield with torches in hand, beginning to clean up the situation. He's here. Fan Yuhai fainted from the fall. Some of the faster warriors found Fan Yuhai, who had fallen off from his horse, lying on the ground weakly. The cunning Fan Yuhai was cunning. The warhorse that was traveling at high speed suddenly fell down, causing him, who was on the back of the horse, to be seriously injured. Good, let's capture him and bring him away. Xiao Feng's face lit up with joy as he finally caught Fan Yuhai. At this time, the light cavalry regiment also rushed over. While Ma Xiangshan went forward to check the situation, he reported to Xiao Feng the situation of the other enemy cavalry. That Lu Duo's luck isn't too good. He met the heavy cavalry regiment. This time he'll be in trouble. Oh, that's really bad luck. When Xiao Feng heard that the heavy cavalry regiment had moved out, and they just happened to meet Lu Duo, he immediately gave up on the idea of going to support them. In the new army, if the heavy cavalry regiment said they were first in terms of cavalry combat ability, naturally no one would dare to say they were second. The situation over there was basically stable. Just as the two regiment commanders expected, Lu Duo was quickly killed when he met the heavy cavalry regiment. This was not to say that he was incompetent. It was just that the combat strength of the heavy cavalry regiment was too ferocious. Their heavy equipment was almost impenetrable, and their 3-meter-long broadswords were like Buddha killing Buddha. In just 3 rounds, more than half of the 1,000 cavalrymen were lost. As the main general, Lu Duo was even beaten off his horse under the joint attack of 4 heavy cavalrymen and became a captive. At this point, the escaping Fan Yuhai's troops were all killed and captured. The situation was set. 4 hours later, the army gathered beside Yang Chendong. Looking at the sky that was about to brighten, the 6th young master said, "There's still a big battle waiting for us brothers. Everyone, work hard. As long as there's a battle to fight, even if we don't sleep for a few days, it's not a problem." Tiger's mane laughed out loud. His words immediately attracted many voices of agreement. Following which, the main force of the new army and the fierce Tiger Regiment all gathered together and rushed towards the main battlefield. On the horizon, a red sun slowly rose. After a busy night, the harvest was not small. After talking to countless surrendered generals, Sihaba also walked out of the main tent. At this moment, he was very satisfied and had great ambitions for the future. In a single night, most of the surrendered generals recognized him as the future Khan of the Northeast Mongolian tribe. Although there were some people who were reserved and waiting for the best offer, they still didn't express their opinions. However, Sihaba was extremely confident. As long as he eliminated the mercenaries and Nari Song's troops today and married Princess Tuoya, it would be equivalent to having a righteous identity. At that time, no one would be able to stop him from ascending to the position of Khan. Pass down the order. Light a fire and cook. Let the brothers eat their fill first, then we can kill. Ha ha ha. Sihaba, who was in a good mood, laughed loudly. He had the appearance of an unparalleled hero. The army began to cook. The fragrance of the dishes filled the air. There were even people who drank wine in advance to celebrate. It was extraordinarily lively. In comparison, Tuoya, Luzhua, and Nari Song who were surrounded in the center became much quieter. Being surrounded in the center, there was no way for them to use their cooking utensils. They could only eat the dry rations they brought with them. This made the expressions of the remaining 3,000 Mongolian cavalrymen not look very good. However, the new recruits who were also eating dry rations did not show any signs of falling morale. They silently gnawed on their dry rations and looked at the enemy cavalry around them. Perhaps they knew that it wouldn't be long before the sixth young master appeared with the main force. At that time, it would be time for them to hold their heads high. At that time, even if they ate large pieces of meat and drank large bowls of wine, it wouldn't be a problem. Tuoya was also eating in small bites. Her gaze constantly moved between the two armies. Nari Song who was at the side moved in front of her. Princess, the war god is indeed good at leading troops. Look, their soldiers' morale is not affected in the slightest by the environment. It is truly amazing. It is very amazing. Tuoya sighed from the bottom of her heart. That war god was the person she admired for a long time. Unfortunately, fate made fools of people. Everyone became enemies and it would be difficult for them to become friends. As if he wanted to use this method to affect the morale of Tuoya's army, Sihaba was not in a hurry to attack. His breakfast actually lasted for a full 2 hours. He originally wanted to continue and subdue the enemy without fighting. However, a sudden news broke his good mood. A scout suddenly reported that the supply base at the rear had been occupied by the mercenaries. The remaining 2,000 cavalrymen were either killed or captured. In short, it had nothing to do with him anymore. Before the army moved, the supplies would move first. Without supplies, who would be willing to follow you and work for you? Sihaba, who heard the news, was naturally furious. In a fit of anger, he threw the mutton in his hand to the ground and pulled out his cavalry sword. He roared loudly, "The mercenaries are too much. Since that is the case, don't blame me for being merciless. Men, gather the army and prepare to attack." Sihaba was finally enraged. The army also began to gather and prepare to attack. Tuoya and the rest also gripped their cavalry swords tightly, ready to fight to the death at any time. Just as both sides were preparing for the attack, a bloody battle was unavoidable. In the distant grassland, wind and thunder suddenly rumbled. Looking from afar, a sea of military green was rapidly approaching. Not good, it's the mercenaries. The sharp-eyed scouts finally discovered the enemy. As they sprinted madly towards the camp, they shouted loudly. This news instantly spread throughout the entire camp. Those tribal generals who were prepared to assist Sihaba immediately lowered their sabers once again. Before seeing the situation clearly, they would not casually make a move. They only had one chance to gamble, so they would not casually make a move. Bastards, who told you to shout? Sihaba saw that the army was moving because of the scouts' shouts. While he angrily reprimanded the scouts for spreading the news, he also hurriedly mobilized his cavalrymen. He had already seen the strength of the mercenaries before. There was nothing to be afraid of. As long as he could defeat the mercenaries in this battle, the initiative would be in his hands again. 25,000 cavalrymen were assembled one by one. They were fully armed and ready to fight back against the mercenaries. Commander Lu Jua, who was surrounded in the middle of the battlefield, sharply discovered an opportunity. He first looked at Tuoya and Naderisong and said, "Princess, General Naderisong, now is the time for us to fight back. While no one is paying attention to us, we will send our troops to Sihaba's central army. As long as we break the formation there, they will definitely lose." "Okay." Tuoya and Naderisong both replied in unison. From a certain perspective, if it wasn't for Sihaba's coercion, Sud Khan might not have died. Just based on this point alone, they would do their best. Sihaba continuously arranged his cavalrymen in front of him. With 25,000 cavalrymen in his hand, his heroic spirit rose. Naturally, he was not afraid of the mercenaries' charge. On the contrary, he wanted to use this battle to show everyone who was the real hero of the grassland. Kill. While he was immensely pleased with himself, suddenly a wave of battle cries came from the side. Tuoya and Lu Jua's troops had joined forces. Close to 10,000 cavalrymen suddenly charged over. They were already less than 3 li away from Sihaba's central army. Chapter 873. Quick! Stop them! Stop them! Seeing this sudden attack, Sihaba turned pale with fright. He was only thinking about dealing with the mercenaries coming from afar and had forgotten about the 10,000 enemies that he had already regarded as meat in his bowl. Now, he could only watch as the mercenaries came closer and closer. Along the way, the cavalrymen who had surrendered to him last night actually did not stop them. Instead, they took the initiative to open up a path. They were clearly here to watch the show. Knowing that he had miscalculated, Sihaba was shocked. At the same time, he hurriedly moved the army to block Tuoya's troops. This time, he had made another bad move. Originally, the main army's cavalrymen had already been arranged. With the advantage in numbers, even if the mercenaries rushed over, it would be impossible for them to break through the defensive line in a short period of time. However, with this move, the front army's formation was thrown into chaos, giving the attacking mercenaries an opportunity to attack. The commander of the new Tatar division, Su He, who was charging at the front, seized this opportunity and launched a continuous and fierce attack with the tip of the arrows. He had never seen such a formation before and had no experience in dealing with it. In addition, the front army was originally on the move. In the chaos, they were forced to retreat again and again. The cavalry formation formed by more than 12,000 men was thrown into chaos and even collapsed. The cavalrymen in the front began to lose. Tuoya and the others from the side also charged forward. The distance between the two sides was less than a li. Moreover, from the looks of it, no one could stop the enemy's charge. When the situation was far from good, Sihaba made an even more foolish decision. He turned around and fled. For the sake of preserving his own life, he completely disregarded the 20,000 plus soldiers and 20,000 surrendered soldiers. He turned around and left the battlefield with only a few dozen of his personal guards. With the protection of the arrow-tip formation, Division Commander Su He quickly broke through the formation and rushed to the front. He saw the scene of someone fleeing. At this moment, General Narisong's shout rang out. "Sihaba has already fled. Who are the rest of you still fighting for? Why don't you dismount and surrender? You can still live. Nari Song's shout reverberated throughout the battlefield, causing the already chaotic enemy troops to become even more chaotic. Many of the enemy cavalry had already stopped their actions of urging their warhorses, instead standing in place and hesitating. Su He noticed the change in the situation and immediately came up with a plan. He got the soldiers around him to shout along with him. Sebaha's grain collection area has been occupied by the mercenaries. He's finished. Any cavalry who still wants to follow him will face the situation of starvation. Everyone, make your own choice. The cavalrymen, who were already at a loss, quickly urged their warhorses to stop when they heard that there was no more rations. They stood there, not knowing what to do. A huge battle that was supposed to happen was stopped just like that. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the ferocious Tiger Regiment was the first to arrive. Countless black muzzles were raised, and anyone who made any strange movements was killed without mercy. In a short period of time, at least 100 riders were killed. The situation on the battlefield became extremely quiet. Although the guns were limited, and it was impossible to kill more than 40,000 cavalrymen present, no one wanted to be the first to stand out. An unimaginable scene appeared. The battlefield was so quiet that it was frightening. Yang Qindong was riding on the white dragon horse, waiting for the bloody battle ahead. Yang Si, who was holding a telescope to observe the situation on the battlefield, suddenly shouted. "Young master, a few dozen riders have escaped. It looks like they want to enter the depths of Mongolia." Escape? Without orders, who can escape? Tiger's Mane, let Ma Xiangshan go and capture them all. Yang Qindong snorted. If too many enemies escaped, reaching tens of thousands, he would be unable to do anything. But only a few dozen riders escaped. That was absolutely not allowed. Ma Xiangshan's light cavalry once again jumped into the formation and chased after the escaping Sahaba. Yang Qindong did not pay attention to this small matter. Instead, he looked at the battlefield that suddenly became quiet and frowned. Then he said with relief, "It looks like the situation on the battlefield is better than we expected. Since that is the case, let's set out and meet these grassland heroes." The situation of this battle far exceeded Yang Qindong's expectations. It was originally a bloody battle, and Yang Qindong was even prepared to lose 2 of his forces. Only when he arrived on the battlefield did he realize that the situation was far better than he expected. Pass down the order. Before Sahaba is captured, no one is to act rashly. Otherwise, the war god's guns will not have eyes. Knowing that at this moment, he had to use a thunderous and forceful method to intimidate everyone, Yang Qindong immediately said without any trace of politeness. He left behind some to pacify everyone. He also made it clear that as long as they did not act rashly, no matter what the final result was, the mercenaries would not act against them. This was the war god's promise. After doing all this, he walked to Tuoya's side. "Princess, if you trust my character, can you come with me over there to talk?" Seeing Yang Qindong again, and not the person who lazily sunbathed by the stream, Tuoya's heart could be said to be filled with all sorts of emotions. "Okay, I trust the war god's character. Please lead the way." Na Risong was not at ease with the princess's safety. He brought a dozen elite soldiers to follow behind Yang Qindong and came to the new army reconnaissance camp 2 li away. There were already several large tents set up here. Seeing Yang Qindong come, Battalion Commander Ding Shan came early to greet him. "Battalion Commander Ding, bring Fan Yuhai and his brothers over." Yang Qindong said, then smiled at the shocked Tuoya and gestured for her to come over. Fan Yuhai was captured by the war god? Tuoya only came back to her senses after a long while, her face full of disbelief. "That's right, it was also my luck. He just happened to run into me when he was escaping, so I took care of him in passing. To tell the truth, although I was enemies with Khagan Suda before, I also respected the Khagan's character. Even if there were casualties in a battle, it was inevitable. However, a despicable person like Fan Yuhai, who used house arrest and threats, was truly shameful. For such a despicable person, I would be more than happy to kill him. However, considering that the princess might hate him even more, I resisted the urge to act and let him stay. Now that he is there, if you want to kill him or cut him up, the princess can do whatever you want. Yang Chendong spoke righteously. At this moment, his body was shining brightly, as if it could make people forget that the reason Fan Yuhai had placed Su De under house arrest was because he had sent people to behead him. Speaking of which, Yang Chendong really didn't need to feel guilty. As an enemy on the battlefield, it was always either you die or I die. Not to mention, it was basically Kaghan Su De who had provoked him several times. He had only retaliated normally and suffered a gunshot wound. That was because his skills weren't as good as Kaghan Su De, so he couldn't blame Yang Chendong. Tuoya also knew this, so in her heart, she had never blamed Yang Chendong. Now that she heard that he had brought her father's murderer to her, she immediately bowed and said gratefully, "Thank you, war god. Since that's the case, I want to kill this person, can I?" "Of course," I just said, "if you want to kill or cut him up, please do so." Yang Chendong nodded without hesitation. For someone like Fan Yuhai, even if Tuoya didn't kill him, he would still kill him. Since that was the case, who did it, what did it matter? Under everyone's gaze, the tied-up Fan Yuhai was brought in front of Tuoya. Because he had fallen off the back of the horse, his face was covered in dirt, and there was a bloody scratch on his face. When people looked at him, he no longer had the appearance of being able to predict everything. Instead, he appeared to be in a very sorry state. Fan Yuhai, who was brought out by two mercenaries, raised his head and saw Tuoya walking towards him with a curved horse. His usually calm face finally revealed a look of fear. He, who had been silent all this time, finally shouted at this moment, "Duke of Loyalty, you can't do this to me. I'm very smart, and you know my ability. How about this, let me go, and I'll be willing to serve you forever." From the moment he was captured until now, Fan Yuhai had been very calm. It was all because he was confident in his ability. Just like when he appeared in front of Kaghan Su De, Kaghan Su De knew that he was ambitious, but still put him in an important position. In the end, this was the personality of the strong. They always believed that they could control everything, that they were the most powerful people in the world, that there was nothing they couldn't solve. Because of this, Fan Yuhai believed that Yang Chendong wouldn't kill him. Instead, he might put him in an important position. With the mentality of waiting for the best offer, Fan Yuhai appeared extremely calm. He was waiting for the other party to discuss conditions with him, waiting for the other party to haggle. However, when he saw Princess Tuoya appear, he knew that things didn't develop as he imagined. Instead, there was a huge problem. Although he didn't know where the problem came from, he thought that he would definitely be useful. As long as he lowered his head, Yang Chendong shouldn't do anything to him. At this moment, Fan Yuhai no longer had the demeanor of a famous general. Perhaps he knew that if he didn't work hard, he might lose his life. At this moment, he was shouting crazily, as if he was afraid that Yang Chendong wouldn't hear him. Yang Chendong naturally heard him. At this moment, he was standing beside Lu Duo and the other cavalrymen who had followed Fan Yuhai for many years. He then looked at these cavalrymen with a tone that carried hidden ridicule, saying, "All of you, listen carefully. This is the general you've always been loyal to, this is the leader who is omnipotent and omniscient in your eyes. Humph. To be honest, he really isn't all that great. At the very least, when facing death, his performance isn't even as good as some soldiers with unyielding characters." Yang Chendong shook his head. At this moment, he was extremely disappointed in Fan Yuhai. Not long ago, he had still treated this person as a dish. However, everything that happened now proved that he had indeed overestimated this opponent. At the very least, when facing death, Fan Yuhai didn't display the backbone that he should have. So what if this kind of person was capable? There would still be a day when he would betray him out of fear of death. Chapter 874. Duke of Loyalty, you won't kill our general, right? Are you just testing him? Lu Duo, who was tightly tied up, struggled to get up. Even though there were two mercenaries who wanted to hold him down, he still managed to break free from their obstruction and jump toward Yang Chendong while shouting. I know you. You're called Lu Duo, and you can be considered a fierce general. To be honest, a person like you following Fan Yuhai is like casting pearls before swine. Your general has angered me time and time again, so he must be killed. It's useless for anyone to plead for mercy. On the other hand, if you want to live, you can loudly beg for mercy. Perhaps I will give you a way out. Yang Chendong, who was already far away, suddenly stopped and then turned around to look at Lu Duo. After saying this, Yang Chendong did not wait for Lu Duo to reply. He had already turned around and walked toward Fan Yuhai, who was kneeling and begging for mercy. At this moment, Tuoya was already prepared to raise her blade. However, she felt that someone was walking toward her from behind. She habitually turned around, and when she saw who it was, she frowned and asked, "What? War God, are you going back on your words? What a joke. I already said that you can punish this person however you want. Even if you let him go now, I won't say no. You can do whatever you want." Yang Chendong shook his head and then walked past the kneeling Fan Yuhai. This person was indeed capable, but unfortunately, his character was too bad. Moreover, he was born with a rebellious nature. He would definitely not put this kind of person in an important position. Yang Chendong walked away. Behind her was still Fan Yuhai's horse shouting. However, it quickly quieted down. Tuoya raised her blade and a large head flew into the air, ending the life of the so-called Jiaoji Kingdom's famous general. Fan Yuhai was killed just like that. Tuoya was finally no longer nervous. She squatted on the ground and cried bitterly. It was still Yang Chendong who walked over and handed over his handkerchief. Wipe it. The dead cannot be brought back to life. If Su De Khan's spirit is still alive after his death, he should be very gratified now. He took the handkerchief from Yang Chendong. Tuoya's cries became even louder. Yang Chendong didn't try to persuade her. This should be the last chance for a daughter to vent. Sometimes, crying was better than holding it in. She cried for another quarter of an hour. When Tuoya's eyes were swollen, she stood up with the help of General Nari Song. Then, the general's voice sounded by her ear. "Princess, the Khan's vengeance has been avenged. Sihaba has also been defeated. The situation in the grasslands is gradually becoming clearer. I wonder if you have any thoughts." Then the general must have something to say. "I'm listening." Tuoya, who had gradually regained her calmness, seemed to have matured a lot in that instant. Na Raizong began to stutter when he was asked this question. "General Na, you are the person I trust the most now. If there's anything you want to say, just say it. Even if you say something wrong, I won't blame you because I know that you must have my best interests in mind." Tuoya said in a comforting manner. Bao Yin had died in battle. Only Na Raizong had been by her side. Even when faced with Sihaba's threat, he didn't take a step back. This kind of person was still worthy of her trust. Na Raizong seemed to be moved by these words. He nodded heavily. "Princess, since this is the case, I will speak the truth. I think you should think about your own future. The Khan is dead. If his spirit is in heaven, what he wants most is for the princess to live a happy life. He hopes that there won't be any more wars in the Mongolian grassland in the north of the desert. Right now, there's such an opportunity. We should seize it." "Seize it?" Then the general can just say it. Tuoya is waiting to be taught. A girl will eventually have to get married. Why don't the princess marry the Duke of Loyalty? With his protection, the war in the Gobi Desert will definitely end quickly. Only in this way can we win a big development. I still remember that the princess was very envious of the people of the grasslands in the beginner city a few days ago. Now is the opportunity. Na Raizong simply said everything. As a person who was highly valued by the Khan, and as a person who had received great kindness from the Khan, he felt that he had to say these words. This was the true repayment of the Khan's kindness. Wait. Tuoya didn't expect Na Raizong to say such words. For a moment, her mind wasn't clear enough. Then the general, what do you mean? Why must I marry the Duke of Loyalty? From the bottom of her heart, Tuoya didn't dislike Yang Chendong. Even if they were enemies, it was also because of the situation at that time. Not only that, she also liked Yang Chendong in her heart. However, because of her identity, she had been suppressing this feeling in the bottom of her heart. Now that Na Raizong suddenly pointed it out and even promised to be righteous, she didn't understand why it would be beneficial to the entire Gobi Desert once she followed the war god. Na Raizong made use of this opportunity to speak his mind. Princess, we all know the combat power of the mercenaries. If we were to fight with them, what do you think the chances of winning are? I'm afraid it's not even 50%. If we don't handle it well, the Gobi Desert Mongol branch will no longer exist in the grasslands. If we are not friends, we are enemies. For the sake of the people of the grassland tribes, we should also join forces with the mercenaries. The best way to join forces is through marriage. This way, we can ensure everyone's safety. Although this is a little unfair to the princess, but from now on, the people of the grasslands will definitely be grateful to you. Moreover, the Khan also had such thoughts and wishes before he died, so. Even the dead Khan had such thoughts. I need to think about it. Tuoya shook her head and didn't make a decision immediately. Although the girls of the grasslands were more straightforward, they would still blush when it came to their own marriage. Tuoya didn't reject at the first moment, which gave Na Raizong hope. Okay, since that's the case, I'll go and talk to the war god. Princess, please wait for the good news. After saying this, Na Raizong strode away. Looking at his leaving footsteps, Tuoya wanted to ask him to stop. However, she didn't know why she opened her mouth several times, but some words just couldn't come out. Yang Chendong had already walked into the main tent. He was waiting for Tuoya to thank him, and at the same time, he wanted to tell her about the situation in the grasslands. Since the mercenaries were here and there was such an opportunity, it would be a great loss if he didn't get some benefits. According to his idea, this time, he had to reach an agreement with Tuoya. In the future, the mercenaries would own the area east of the Een Ma River and they wouldn't be allowed to cross the border. In this way, the crisis in the west of the beginning city would be completely resolved, and he would be free to do more things. After waiting for a long time, Tuoya didn't appear, but Na Raizong came to visit. He thought that maybe she was too sad, so this matter was the same as what Na Raizong said. He sat down and said to Yang Si, please invite Na Raizong. Na Raizong strode in and came in front of Yang Chendong. He first bowed to him with Mongolian etiquette, then raised his head to look at Yang Chendong and said loudly, War God, our princess has decided to marry you. This is the best way for us to unite. What do you think? Yang Chendong, who was drinking tea, spat out the tea in his mouth. Fortunately, the two of them were 5 meters apart, so he didn't have to worry about the tea splashing on others. However, Yang Chendong, who spat out the tea, was still frightened. He ignored his gaffe and asked, General Na, what did you say just now? Can you say it again? Yang Chendong couldn't be blamed for losing his composure. This was too different from what he had imagined. War God, I said that in order for us to unite better, if you can marry our princess, many people will be happy to see it. What do you think? Na Raizong didn't show any anger because of Yang Chendong's loss of composure. On the contrary, he was very happy. Just from this behavior alone, this war god did not have any malicious intentions towards the princess, unlike the dead Fan Yuhai and the escaped Sahaba who both wanted to take the princess for themselves and make use of her. This time, Yang Chendong really heard it clearly, but he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he fell into deep thought. With the death of Sud Khan, the only person left with the golden bloodline was Tuoya. Perhaps this bloodline was nothing in his eyes, but in the entire Gobi Mongol tribe, she enjoyed a very high status. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that whoever had Tuoya's support would have the orthodox status. At that time, anyone who dared to provoke them would be regarded as a rebellion. From this point of view, if he could take Tuoya as his wife, there would be a lot of benefits. Moreover, this girl was indeed very beautiful, especially her big breasts which were very majestic. However, Yang Chendong had to admit this fact. Not only did he get a beauty, but he also had enough ingredients to stand on the table. Just from this point of view, marrying Tuoya would only bring him more harm than good. Many people had pursued such a thing, but they couldn't. Now, this big pie was thrown in front of Yang Chendong. It was impossible to say that he wasn't moved at all. In the end, it wasn't about the beauty, but it would be very helpful to his future career. Wasn't the reason why Yang Chendong captured Fan Yuhai and sent him to Tuoya to be dealt with? It was also for the safety of the west side of the beginning city. Once he married this girl, the situation in the west side would be stable. This would play a great role in promoting the development of Yang Xie's forces in the grassland. In fact, this move could save a lot of time and a lot of manpower. There were too many benefits, and it was impossible to refuse. Yang Chendong quickly made a decision in his heart. When he looked at Na Raizong, his expression became much more serious. Princess Tuoya is a good girl. It's naturally a blessing to be favored by her. But when Na Raizong heard Yang Chendong's words, a smile appeared on his face. He rushed over because he believed that Yang Chendong would agree with his idea. After all, this was a great thing. However, when he heard the word "but," he was still stunned. He was a little puzzled. Could it be that this war god would disagree? Chapter 875. Under Na Raizong's suspicious gaze, Yang Chendong continued, "However, I already have 5 wives, and there's still one that hasn't been married. If the princess marries me, she'll be my 7th wife. Wouldn't that be too unfair for her? If the princess is unwilling because of this, I won't be angry, nor will I attack you. As long as you're willing, we can still redraw the line and live in peace. War god, as far as I know, you Han men can divorce their wives. You can divorce your previous 6 wives. If you do that, impossible. Since I have married them, no matter what their identities are, they will always be my women. This will not change for the rest of my life. It's just like how if the princess marries me, nothing will change for the rest of my life. If that's what you're thinking, then I'm sorry, but please don't say such things in the future. Let's not talk about marriage. Let's talk about how to draw the line." Yang Chendong firmly interrupted Na Raizong. Although Tuoya's status was very noble, it was impossible for him to abandon his other 6 wives for the sake of this woman. Na Raizong could only sigh at Yang Chenjiang's decisiveness. "All right, I'll tell the princess your intentions. As for what to do, please give us some time." "All right. But please be quick. We've surrounded 40,000 soldiers and they're waiting for us to give them an explanation." Although Yang Chendong knew that marriage was a serious matter, it wasn't a child's play. It needed time to consider, but the current conditions obviously didn't allow it. The mercenaries' prestige could suppress those people for a while, but no one knew what unforeseen events would happen after a long time. "War god, don't worry. I'll give you an answer after discussing it with the princess." Na Raizong also understood the situation and nodded before leaving the tent. Outside the tent, Tuoya's hands were tightly clenched together. She looked like an ordinary girl who had been frightened and was waiting for news. Although she knew that if she married the war god, Yang Chendong would benefit greatly and wouldn't be rejected, she still couldn't be at ease before she received a definite answer. After a moment of nervousness, she finally heard footsteps behind her. Her face turned even redder. "Princess, the situation has changed." Na Raizong appeared behind Tuoya. He didn't immediately congratulate her. Instead, he suddenly said such a sentence. "What's going on?" Tuoya ignored her feminine modesty and turned to ask. Could it be that the war god didn't like her? Or did he never intend to keep the Mongols from the Gobi Desert and wanted to exterminate them? Facing the question, Na Raizong truthfully recounted what had happened in the big tent just now. When Tuoya heard that Yang Chendong had 6 wives and that she was only the 7th, her expression turned ugly. Na Raizong saw all the changes on Tuoya's face and concluded that the princess still liked the war god. Since that was the case, he coughed lightly to attract her attention and said, "Princess, in my opinion, this is a good thing. This proves that the war god values relationships." "Oh, what do you mean?" Tuoya asked in confusion. "Princess, think about it. With your status, if you say that you want to get married, who knows how many men will break their heads. When that time comes, even if they have a wife, I'm afraid that they will abandon her without hesitation. But is this kind of love reliable? If they can abandon other women for you, who knows if they won't do the same thing in the future?" The war god knows this, but he still said the truth and didn't back down. "Doesn't this mean that if you marry him, you won't have to worry about any accidents in this life? Isn't that a good thing?" Na Raizong explained with a straight face. "Ah. You can say that?" Tuoya was shocked. "Of course you can say that. In fact, with the war god's fame, whether it's on the grasslands or in the prosperous Great Ming dynasty, there should be countless women who want to marry him. But until now, he only has 6 wives. This shows that he has never been blind when it comes to choosing women. Now that he's telling us this in advance, it proves that he's magnanimous and honest. How can a man like this not be reliable? Not to mention, if he wanted to, how many women wouldn't he have? Why is there a need to restrain yourself like this?" Na Raizong was still talking non-stop, and Tuoya's thoughts were also changed because of these words. It was as if the image of a perfect man had appeared in front of her. If she gave up because of this, it would definitely be the biggest mistake in her life. "Alright, I'll go see him. I want to have a chat with him." Tuoya finally made a decision. She didn't care about how many wives Yang Chendong had. She cared more about whether this man cared about her or not. Tuoya and Na Raizong arrived outside the tent together. Yang Si had been waiting for them and directly led them into the tent. At this moment, Yang Chendong was also sitting precariously, but for some reason, he was more nervous than usual. After entering the tent, Na Raizong took the initiative to retreat to the side and stood together with Yang Si. He completely handed over the initiative to Tuoya. "War god, are you really not willing to give up your wives for me? You should know that I have the bloodline of the Golden Family. If you marry me, the entire Mongol desert will listen to your words, listen to your orders, listen to your..." "Don't say any more. I won't give up on them." Yang Chendong directly interrupted Tuoya. Although it was a little heartless, it was also very decisive. This was his bottom line. He would not allow anyone to provoke him, even if there were great benefits in front of him. After being rejected on the spot, Tuoya's expression flashed with a hint of melancholy. Yang Chendong also sighed in his heart. He knew that it was very likely that things would fall through, so he simply gave up the idea of a marriage alliance. He wanted to use this opportunity to negotiate the border between the two sides. Just when he thought that the matter had come to an end, Tuoya suddenly said, "Okay, war god, your loyalty is admirable. I'm also moved. I'm willing to be your woman. For the future of the tribe, I'm also willing to cooperate with you. I'll listen to everything you say in the future, but I have one more condition." "What condition?" Yang Chendong, who was surprised, was no longer as calm as before when he encountered anything. He was really shocked by Tuoya's words. However, when he thought of the condition, he instinctively became more careful. "I want you to give me a city that's about the same size as the first city. It will be built here to benefit our Mongol desert tribe." Tuoya opened her mouth and said very seriously, "Build a city?" Yang Chendong was stunned by this request. Narisong took half a step forward and explained, "While ago, I accompanied the princess to the first city and was attracted by the prosperity there. The Mongolian people living there were very happy. The princess said that she hoped that one day, the Mongolian tribe in the north of the Gobi Desert would have a city like this, where the people could live freely. When danger comes, there would be a place to hide. That's right. This is my wish. It can also be considered as a dowry for you to marry me. Do you agree?" Tuoya looked at Yang Chendong with a serious expression. At this moment, her heart began to beat faster, as if she was afraid that Yang Chendong would shake his head. Although she also knew that building a city would require a lot of financial and material resources, she still made such a request. In her opinion, if the other party did not consider this condition, then perhaps he really did not like her. There was no need for her to stay here. To Tuoya and Na Rizong's surprise, Yang Chendong did not even think about it and nodded directly. "Okay, build a city. Build a city that's about the same size as the first city and name it North Desert City. But I also have a request. From now on, there are no Mongol desert tribe in the world. They will be unified under the jurisdiction of the mercenary army. If you agree, I will agree to your request." The reason why Yang Chendong agreed so readily was not because he was hot-headed, but because he originally had such an idea, but he thought that the time had not yet appeared. Since Tuoya took the initiative to mention it, he pushed the boat with the current and agreed. It was the best of both worlds. "Okay, I agree." Tuoya was also straightforward. Knowing that her father was gone, if no one had the courage to stand up now, the entire Mongol desert tribe would be in a state of disunity. It was only a matter of time before they would be conquered. Since that was the case, it was better to give it to the mercenary army. At least they could protect their own people with their strength. Things went unexpectedly smoothly. Yang Chendong and Tuoya were also unexpectedly generous. The matter was settled. Next, Yang Chendong walked down from the chair and reached out to hold the hand of Tuoya, who was blushing. The two of them walked toward the place where the tribal leaders were still waiting for the news. It had been more than 2 hours since Tuoya had left, and these small leaders were already somewhat impatient. However, when they considered the fact that the nearby area was full of well-organized and murderous mercenaries, they had no choice but to suppress their temper. When there was finally a result, when they saw that Yang Chendong, who was known as the god of war, and Princess Tuoya were actually holding hands, many people's eyes began to widen infinitely. They really did not understand. How did things become like this after such a short time? How did this magic trick change? Princess Tuoya did not let everyone wait for long. In front of everyone, she announced her decision to marry Yang Chendong and what path the Mongol desert tribe would take in the future. Chapter 876. Tuoya was still announcing her decision as a member of the Golden Family. Yang Chendong, who was standing to the side, received the latest news from Yang Si and lightly nodded his head. "Bring him in." Tuoya finally finished her speech. Then, her gaze naturally fell on Yang Chendong. Since she had chosen this person to be her husband, of course, he would take the lead from now on. Yang Chendong hugged Tuoya and smiled. Then, he looked at the tribe leaders who were staring at each other in shock and said, "The princess has already made her decision. In a few days, I will take her as my legal wife. At that time, I welcome everyone to come to the beginning city to congratulate us. Of course, if anyone is not satisfied with this result, you can choose not to come. However, from now on, you will be viewed as my enemy. In the future, there will be no other path of survival in the Mongol region. Come, bring him in." Yang Chendong's threat was still ringing in everyone's ears when the tightly bound Sihaba was dragged in front of everyone by Badao Jiang and Peng Yu. This person, together with Fan Yuhai, forced Khan Su to death. According to the law, he should be beheaded. "Kill him!" Yang Chendong merely shouted, and Yang Si, who was standing at the side, had already picked up a demon head blade. Soon after, the blade was raised and a head was chopped off. Sihaba, who had been caught alive by the light cavalry regiment, didn't even have the chance to say a word before he was beheaded on the spot, dying in front of the leaders of the other small tribes. This move of killing the chicken to scare the monkey, or even the monkey to scare the monkey, frightened many people. Originally, they wanted to voice out their objections. Why should the mercenaries occupy this place? Why should the Mongol tribe that had lasted for hundreds of years be swallowed by the mercenaries? However, when they saw Sihaba's death, many people wisely shut their mouths. The situation was stronger than the person. Now that the mercenaries belonged to the side of the general situation and had the support of Princess Tuoya, who could be his opponent? That's right, in terms of numbers, the Mongol army had 40,000 men, far more than the 20,000 mercenaries. However, there were too many factions among them, and it was impossible for them to be united. Furthermore, everyone was worried that if they jumped out first, they would die miserably and be targeted. Therefore, even though Sihaba had died right in front of them, not a single one of them dared to resist or protest. No one said anything. Yang Chendong's face was like a spring breeze as he said, "All right, since that's the case, I'll take it that you all agree to this decision. In order to express my desire to marry Princess Tuoya, I will soon build a city, North Desert City, at the place where the great battle just took place, Balsi and Tan, the temporary capital built at the end of the Yuan dynasty. At that time, as long as you are friendly with us, you will have the right to live there. At that time, you won't have to suffer alone in the yurt during the winter. Once the war comes, you won't have nowhere to hide." While looking at these Mongol people in front of him, Yang Chendong's lips curled into a smile, continuing, "Of course, building a city requires a lot of silver, and even more so a lot of manpower. Initial estimates suggest that the mercenaries will invest 15 million taels of silver, and the manpower needed will be close to 1 million people. If anyone wishes to work and earn money, feel free to come and sign up. Naturally, the small tribes that are friendly with us will take priority." Hong. The originally silent crowd, because of Yang Chendong's words, completely became noisy. Investing 15 million taels of silver, and the manpower needed would be around 1 million people. This was a real benefit. Apart from herding livestock, they also fought. Wasn't the reason for fighting over territory and resources? Now, the opportunity to earn money and change their lives was right in front of them. Not only that, they didn't have to risk their lives on the battlefield. Who wouldn't like such a good thing, and who would dare to reject it? Perhaps some small leader's brain was really muddled. If he rejected it, when he returned to his tribe, he would be drowned in saliva. Enemies weren't eternal, and neither were friends. Only benefits were eternal. At this moment, Yang Chendong's words were effective. The voices of opposition that should have appeared disappeared. On the contrary, everyone now wanted to get closer to Yang Chendong. Even if their status wasn't high enough, being able to have a good relationship with Na Ri Song and the mercenaries was also a good thing. Whether it was because of their status or because they wanted to increase their prestige, Yang Chendong didn't say anything to the crowd. Instead, he held Tuoya's hand and left, leaving everything to Tiger's Mane, He Bi, and Na Ri Song. Tuoya was in a good mood. Now, the Mongol tribe in Mo Bay needed peace and development, and all these could only be brought by Yang Chendong. As for the Mongol tribe in Mo Bay completely disappearing in the future, Tuoya didn't care anymore. As long as the people lived well, was the name really that important? Originally, they thought there would be a bloody battle, but they didn't expect it to end in such a good way. While the mercenaries admired the sixth young master, the construction of the city, especially the matter of who stayed to preside over the overall situation, became a problem that they needed to consider. Once they decided to stay here to build Mo Bay City, there was no doubt that they wouldn't be qualified to participate in the war for a short time. This was a very uncomfortable thing for the brave warriors. Therefore, when Tiger's Mane and Hebe talked to the senior officers, no one was willing to take the initiative to take this task. For this matter, that night, Tiger's Mane and Hebe had to disturb Yang Chendong, and Tuoya could only reluctantly leave the main tent. The knot in her heart was finally untied. From the moment Tuoya made the decision, she regarded herself as Yang Chendong's seventh wife. Of course, there was the necessary restraint. Before the marriage, she wouldn't be too close to Yang Chendong, but it was always a good thing to stay a little longer. In the big tent, there were only 4 people left: Yang Chendong, Yang Si, Tiger's Mane and Hebe. He casually pointed to the chairs in front of him. "You've all been tired for a day, sit down." After thanking him, Tiger's Mane and Hebe sat down separately. Only Yang Si didn't. Instead, he poured tea for everyone. He was very clear about his position. He was a servant of the Yang family, now, in the future, and forever. As long as the master was here, he didn't have the qualification to sit down. "How is it? Those people are still honest, right?" Taking the steaming hot tea from Yang Si, Yang Chendong asked with a smile. "Honest, they can't be any more honest. With such great benefits in front of them, how could they not be honest?" Tiger's Mane chuckled. "Well, it turns out that benefits always come first. This is far more powerful than any powerful force. Of course, wealth also needs enough strength to protect it. By the way, who will stay here next? Have the 2 of you decided?" Yang Chendong chuckled. This was originally within his expectations. With such great benefits, if anyone still objected, then they really had to be kicked in the head by a donkey. At the mention of this issue, the smiles on Tiger's Mane and Hebe's faces disappeared. They had come precisely for this matter. According to the 6th young master's intention, the people who stayed here to build the city would definitely be selected from the First Army. Who would be selected and who would not be selected, and whether the selected people would agree or not, this was very troublesome. Although it was the duty of a soldier to obey orders, if the order was directly given without considering the individual's wishes, then the task would not be completed very well. When the time came and it really delayed the important matter, then it would be their fault. "Young master, regarding the selection of people, the deputy commander and I separately talked to the 3 division commanders, but it seems that they don't want to stay." Tiger's Mane knew that he had to speak at this time. Although saying this would more or less make them seem incompetent, but the truth still had to be told. "Oh? There is such a thing?" Yang Chendong frowned. He could understand the thoughts of the 3 division commanders. They all wanted to make a contribution and stay in North Desert City. Obviously this wish was not easy to achieve. "Yang Si, go and find the 3 division commanders." Although Yang Chendong could make the decision, he still wanted to see the 3 division commanders before making a decision. Yang Si agreed and left. Yang Chendong looked at Tiger's Mane and Hebe and said, "This is actually not a bad thing. It proves that the officers all want to make a contribution on the battlefield. This is a manifestation of high morale." "Yes, yes." Tiger's Mane and Hebe nodded repeatedly in agreement. After a while, the Independent Division Commander Xin Honghai, the Tatar Division Commander Su He, and the Recruit Division Commander Lu Zhua all came to the main tent. The three of them did not have a seat, so they just stood in front of Yang Chendong. The three of them stood there with different expressions. Xin Honghai had a conflicted expression. Su He had a straight face and looked up, ignoring everyone's gaze. Even when Yang Chendong's gaze fell on him, he still did not move. Lu Zhua's gaze was somewhat evasive, not daring to look directly at Yang Chendong. Clearly, the three of them all knew what they were going to talk about this time. Speaking of which, staying here to build North Desert City was a huge task. At the very least, it was not an ordinary identity that could suppress the situation. In the entire new army, other than the commander and deputy commander, they could only choose from these three division commanders. Yang Chendong's gaze carefully wandered over the three of them, then he nodded and said, "I think you all know why I, the young master, called you here. Then let's not beat around the bush. One of you three needs to stay here to be responsible for the safety of North Desert City. Which one of you is willing to take on this responsibility?" The words were asked by Yang Chendong. No matter how unwilling the three of them were in their hearts, they had to answer at this moment. The Tatar division commander Su He was the first to speak. "Sixth young master, I do not want to stay. I am more willing to go to war with the sixth young master." Chapter 877. It was very straightforward and decisive. It could be seen that Su He had made up her mind. Yang Chendong couldn't say anything to blame him. Instead, he looked at the other two with a questioning gaze. Recruit Division Leader Lu Zhua finally opened his mouth under the scrutiny. "Sixth young master, I don't want to stay either. I still want to learn more about war. If there's an opportunity like this in the future, I might choose to stay, but now," Lu Zhua rejected him in a tactful manner. He was giving Yang Chendong face. However, it was hard to express his unwillingness to stay. Okay. It wasn't clear whether Yang Chendong was angry or not. After saying that word, his gaze fell on the last person, Xin Honghai. Xin Honghai was a person who handled matters calmly and had good personal ability. This was also the reason why Tiger's Mane had taken a fancy to him and transferred him to be the deputy division leader of an independent division. Reality proved that this decision was correct. When Tiger's Mane didn't have time to manage the army, this person took on most of the responsibilities and never caused any major problems. Therefore, when Tiger's Mane was promoted by one rank, he was also promoted by half a rank and became a division leader. He was the kind of person who was lucky and had a prosperous career. Now, he didn't express his opinion. Therefore, when Yang Chendong's gaze fell on him, he hesitated even more. In the end, he sighed in his heart and said, "If that's the case, sixth young master, I'll stay." Xin Honghai, who had previously rejected him, actually agreed. This made Tiger's Mane and Shibi, who were sitting there, look suspicious. Yang Chendong smiled and asked curiously, "You're really willing to stay? Don't you know that if you stay here, there won't be any major battles in the short term? You won't have a chance to perform on the battlefield." "Hee, I know. However, I got this position because I got it easy. This time, I have a chance to stabilize myself. Maybe I can use this opportunity to train my soldiers." Xin Honghai had a smile on his face, but there was a hint of bitterness in his laughter. There was nothing he could do about it. Su He and Lu Zhua had already expressed their opinions. Now, he was the only candidate left. If he didn't agree, wouldn't that make things difficult for the sixth young master? Thinking that everything he had now was given to him by the sixth young master, he couldn't do such a thing. He could only bite the bullet. Okay. Xin Honghai agreed, but no matter what kind of thoughts and intentions he had, at least someone had taken the initiative to volunteer. Yang Chendong nodded with satisfaction. Even so, from now on, the independent division would not be under the leadership of the new First Army. It would become the independent division that guarded the Mabe dynasty. The commander would be Xin Honghai, and the deputy commander would be Narisong. The Tatar division of the new First Army will be expanded from the original 10 battalions to 20 battalions. The new recruit division will be expanded from the original 15 battalions to 20 battalions. The immediate regiment will be expanded from the original 5 battalions to 10 battalions. The light cavalry regiment will be expanded from the original 5 battalions to 20 battalions and 2 immediate companies. The reconnaissance battalion will be expanded from the original 5 battalions to 4 battalions. Considering that the heavy equipment is still being built, the number of the heavy cavalry regiment will remain unchanged. So, I calculate that the number of the new First Army will be increased from the original 24,800 people to 27,200 people now, which is an increase of more than 2,000 people. He. Listening to Yang Chendong's arrangement, Tiger's Mane, Shi Bi, and others all laughed, especially Su Mang and Lu Zhua. The number of people they brought with them had increased from the original 6,100 to the current 8,100, which meant that the strength of the new First Army had increased a lot. However, such laughter did not last long. Then, with another sentence from Yang Chendong, everyone was stunned. The independent division also needs to be expanded. The required personnel will be selected from the Mongolian tribes in the Mabe dynasty. The specific number of people recruited is temporarily set as 10 regiments and 1 regiment with 5 battalions, which is 20,000 people in total. Originally, Xin Honghai only led 6,000 soldiers per person. Now, it suddenly increased to 20,000 people, which was an increase of more than 3 times. If they worked hard, they would catch up with the number of the new First Army. How could it not be surprising? But after the surprise, everyone knew that this was originally what Yang Chendong did in order to compensate Xin Honghai for taking the initiative to stay. For a while, everyone's face was a little gloomy. This was their 6th young master. If you were willing to make sacrifices, he would always try his best to compensate you. The current situation was a living example. They stayed for another 3 days. During this period, Yang Chendong met many small leaders of the Mongolian tribes in the Mabe dynasty. In the face of enough benefits, everyone had a good talk with each other. They also approved the marriage between Yang Chendong and Infanta Tuoya. They all promised that they would go to the beginning city to congratulate them on the wedding. Yang Chendong also promised everyone that when he returned to the beginning city, the first batch of construction materials would be sent over. At that time, he would need everyone's support and so on. The beginning city was about 700 li away from the Inma River. In addition, the distance from the Inma River to the Mabe city was about 300 li. The total distance was more than 1,000 li. In between the two cities, there were also Wanda City, Guangwu Town, and other places. In this way, they were connected. This would play a great role in stimulating the economy of more Mongolian tribes and influencing more Mongolian people. This plan also allowed Yang Chendong to smoothly kick out the second leg on the grassland. The cities could communicate with each other and support each other. The foundation would also be more stable. Yang Chendong left the specific matters of the construction of the city to Yang Si. He let him take the lead and agreed that the lord of the beginning city, Yu Mian, would send more capable people to support. Yang Si, you have to remember that the construction of the Mabe city is very important. From now until it snows in winter, that is, about 5 months. I ask you to build the prototype of the Mabe city in this period of time. The 4 walls in the city must be built well. The warm houses in the city must also be built well. This is a process from scratch to something. There must be some difficulties in the middle, but it doesn't matter. The beginning city and Qiqian city will give you the greatest support. Hundreds of thousands of people in the Mabe Mongolian tribe will also fully support you. Do I have the confidence to complete this work well? Yes, only if young master asks me to do something, I will do it. I will never turn back without orders. Yang Si said with a firm expression. Good, good. Yang Chendong patted Yang Xi's shoulder happily. You just need to focus on building the city. The security work will be left to Xian Honghai and Na Raizong. I will arrange for people to take care of other things in the city later. You just need to grasp the general direction. Yang Xi's identity was naturally not suitable to be the lord of any city. Yang Chendong had to return to the beginning city to decide on the candidate for the position of the lord of the city. But the city didn't wait for people. The construction of the city had to start first. By the way, although these large and small tribes have to stand on our side for the sake of their interests, they still have to be tested if they are not sincere. You must pay attention to your own safety. The matter is urgent. I will allow you to withdraw first. Young master, I don't want the scene under the Beiding Gate in the capital to happen again. When talking about that matter, Yang Xi felt a burst of emotion. In order to save his life, the young master had actually given him a blood transfusion. Just based on this, how could he not sacrifice his life and give it his all? Young master, don't worry. Yang Xi knows what to do. 3 days later, Yang Chendong finally left. Other than leaving behind the independent regiment, the rest of the army was brought back. Princess Tuoya also left with him. On the day they left, many small leaders of the tribes came to see them off. They were all brimming with smiles. Yang Chendong was also smiling the entire time. However, everyone knew that no one could tell how much sincerity there was under this smile. With the accompaniment of the army, the return journey was extremely smooth. When they returned to the Yang residence in the beginning city, Yang Chendong immediately arranged for people to summon the lord of the city, Yu Mian, and the principal of the beginning city academy, Wang Si. Originally, Wang Si wanted to let Yang Chendong take on the role of the principal. However, he was still rejected. It was very difficult for him to have the time to go to the academy to teach everyone anything. Sometimes, he would not even go once for a long time. The position of the principal did not live up to its name. Therefore, he only took on the position of the honorary principal and taught everything. The two of them came to the Yang residence one after the other. First, the lord of the city, Yu Mian, reported the development of the beginning city to Yang Chendong. Reporting to the sixth young master, after our continuous efforts, the cement factory has now been set up here. Although we can't mass-produce our own cement due to some practical reasons, we can still solve a part of our needs. Speaking of which, we have to thank the scientific and technical personnel sent by the academy. They have a very deep theoretical foundation. Not long after they came into contact with the practice, they put forward some suggestions for improvement. Now, it seems that they are very practical. Also, our grain fields have been developed to 300,000 mu. As long as the people living temporarily in the city are willing, they will be given some fertile land. They only need to pay us a tax of 30% according to the harvest. The army's grain fields are all managed by the logistics division. They are all young and strong people. It is a small matter for them to put in some effort. By the end of autumn, we will definitely have a big harvest. In order to ensure that the vegetables and grains can last longer, I have also followed the instructions of the sixth young master. We have built a large granary in the city and dug many cellars outside the city. After the evaluation by the professionals sent by the academy, there is no problem with the depth and width. It can serve as a refrigeration system to ensure that the vegetables can be used for a longer period of time. The 200,000 Han people and 30,000 educated youths sent by the Crimson City are already in place. Most of them have already adapted to the environment here and have begun to work. These people are all very good. As expected of the people sent by the Crimson City. They have already shown their skills in many jobs and proved their abilities. As Yu Mian reported one by one, Yang Chendong nodded his head. Good, good. As long as the problem of food is solved, there will be no problem with the people's hearts. Very good. Thank you for your hard work, City Lord Yu and Principal Wang. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled Sword Will YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.